Chapter 1. The Trial No One Sees. The forest north of Konoha is quiet at 3 in the morning. Not silent. You can still hear the wind moving through the pines, the distant call of a night bird, the soft creak of branches settling under their own weight. But quiet in that specific way a place gets right after something violent has happened in it. Like the trees themselves are holding their breath. If you'd been standing at the edge of that clearing an hour earlier, you would have watched a 12-year-old boy in an orange jumpsuit take a giant shuriken to the back to save the life of the one teacher who actually believed in him. You would have watched that same boy stand back up, shaking with something that wasn't quite chakra and wasn't quite rage, and beat a grown Chunin traitor into the dirt with nothing but 1,000 shadow clones and a promise he refused to break. You already know that story. Everybody does. It's the night Naruto Uzumaki graduated without a headband, learned the truth about the fox sealed in his belly, and earned his first real Hittite from a bleeding, half-conscious Iruka Yumino who told him he was proud of him. That's the story everyone knows. This isn't that story. Or okay, it is that story, right up until the part where Iruka collapses from blood loss and the medics arrive and everyone assumes the danger is over, because it isn't. And if you've been with this channel for a while, you already know that's exactly where things start to go sideways. So if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because we are about to watch dead last Naruto Uzumaki do something that nobody, not Iruka, not the Hokage, not even Naruto himself, sees coming. Let's get into it. The medics take Iruka first. That's protocol. Critical injury takes priority over minor injury, and a giant shuriken wound to the back beats scraped knuckles and chakra exhaustion every time. Naruto watches them carry his teacher away on a stretcher, watches the worry etched into every line of the medic Nin's face, and for a second he just stands there in the clearing with Mizuki's unconscious body a few feet away and doesn't know what to do with his hands. That's when he sees it. It's not much. A scrap of fabric caught on the low branch of a cedar tree, maybe 15 feet from where Mizuki went down. Dark gray, tightly woven, not the kind of material a Chunin like Mizuki would wear under his standard vest. Naruto almost doesn't notice it at all. He's exhausted, he's bleeding from 3 separate scrapes, and every part of his body is screaming at him to just sit down and let someone else handle the rest of the night. But he's also holding the forbidden scroll of sealing under his arm. The actual scroll, the one Mizuki tricked him into stealing, the one with an entire clan's worth of S-rank techniques written on it in faded ink, the one that is currently his responsibility whether he asked for that responsibility or not. And Naruto Uzumaki, whatever else people say about him, has never once in his life been able to leave something unfinished. So instead of following the medic team back toward the village, he walks over to that scrap of fabric and picks it off the branch. Turns it over in his fingers, and notices, this is the part that matters, that it's cut clean on one edge, like something snagged it hard enough to tear away in a straight line, not the ragged edge you'd get from brushing past a branch by accident. Something pulled away from this tree in a hurry. He says out loud, to absolutely nobody, because that's what Naruto does when he's thinking. He talks to himself. That's not Mizuki-sensei's stuff. Here's where a normal 12-year-old, hell, where the Naruto everybody thinks they know, would shrug, pocket the fabric as a weird souvenir, and go home to sleep for 16 hours after the most intense night of his life. But something in the back of his head itches. It's the same itch he gets during pranks, when he's scouting a target and something about the guard rotation doesn't line up with what he expected. A wrongness, a piece that doesn't fit the shape of the puzzle he thought he was solving. Mizuki didn't come out here alone. He crouches down next to the unconscious Chunin, and this is the detail that the official report will later undersell, because nobody watching from a distance would have known to look for it. Naruto checks Mizuki's pouches. Not to steal anything. He's not that kind of prankster, but because something about how fast Mizuki reacted tonight has been bothering him since the fight ended. Mizuki panicked the second Naruto figured out the scroll story was a lie. He panicked like a man who'd already told someone else the plan was working, and now had to explain why it wasn't. Naruto finds the second scroll. Small. Sealed with wax, no markings, tucked into an inner pocket that isn't standard Chunin gear. He doesn't open it. He's not an idiot. Or, well, he's not the idiot people assume he is. and a mystery scroll from a trader in the middle of a forest at 3 in the morning is exactly the kind of thing that gets Jonin killed in stories his classmates used to whisper about. But he pockets it, along with the fabric scrap, and he stands up and looks around the clearing one more time. Footprints. Not Mizuki's. Those are already accounted for. Backtrack to the tree line where the fight started. These are smaller, lighter, moving away from the clearing at an angle that suggests someone circling around rather than fleeing in a straight line. Someone who watched the fight and left before the medics arrived. Someone who didn't want to be seen. Naruto stares at those footprints for a long moment. And then, and this is the moment, if you're tracking the story of how a 12-year-old academy failure ends up doing something that gets the attention of the entire Jonin Corps, he makes a decision that has nothing to do with instinct and everything to do with a mind that's been quietly, invisibly outpacing every test Konoha has ever given him. He doesn't go home. He doesn't go find an adult. He makes 20 shadow clones. All right, he tells them, and his voice comes out steadier than he expects, given how much of his chakra he's already burned through tonight. Spread out. Grid pattern, like when we used to play manhunt behind the orphanage. Nobody engages if you find something. You just watch, you remember, and you come back and tell me. The clones nod and vanish into the trees in a loose fan formation, 5 in front, the rest peeling off at intervals to cover a wider radius. It's not a technique any academy instructor taught him. It's not something Iruka showed him, or Mizuki, or anyone. It's something Naruto pieced together himself, alone, during hundreds of hours of unsupervised training in empty training grounds where nobody was watching him closely enough to notice what he was actually practicing. Because here's the thing about being ignored your whole life. People assume that if nobody's teaching you, you're not learning anything. They don't consider what happens when a kid with an unlimited chakra reserve and nothing but time on his hands starts running his own experiments. Starts using a technique everyone else treats as a party trick. The Shadow Clone Jutsu, chakra expensive, mostly used for scouting or distraction in the exam curriculum, and instead asks a question none of his instructors ever thought to ask him. What if I made 100 of these and had them all practice something different at once? Naruto has spent 2 years secretly running training regimens that would exhaust a full Jonin, using clone shared memory to compress months of repetition into weeks. Nobody in Konoha knows this. Not Iruka, not the Hokage. Not even the Thirds ever watchful ANBU, because Naruto is careful, has always been careful, in the one part of his life where being careful actually mattered to him. To train in places nobody bothers checking. Tonight that quiet, invisible expertise is about to make its first real appearance in front of someone who matters. Half a mile away, 3 Jonin are finishing a routine perimeter sweep. Their names don't matter much to this story. One of them, a sharp-eyed woman with her hair pulled back tight and saban tucked in her flak vest, is the one who'll end up filing the report that changes everything. So let's give her a name. Yuki Ain Mori, a mid-tier Tokubetsu Jonin assigned to border patrols on the North Tree Line this month. Standard rotation. Standard night. She and her 2 teammates are about to head back to the gate to log off shift when one of them stops mid-stride. You feel that? He asks. Yuki does. A ripple of chakra signatures, faint but distinct, moving through the forest in a pattern that's organized. Deliberate. Multiple sources, evenly spaced, converging slowly toward a central point like a net closing. That's not one person, her teammate says. That's a coordinated sweep. Umbu? The third asks. Yuki shakes her head slowly. She's spent 6 years doing exactly this kind of perimeter work, and she knows what an ANBU search pattern feels like. Tight, near silent, chakra suppressed almost to nothing. This isn't that. This is loud, almost sloppy in its chakra output, but the pattern itself, the spacing, the way each signature seems to be covering a specific radius before reporting back to a central point, that part isn't sloppy at all. That part is textbook. Let's go look, she says. They move through the trees fast and low, and within a few minutes they arrive at the edge of a clearing that's already showing signs of a fight. Scorched earth, a massive shattered shuriken half buried in a tree trunk, drag marks in the dirt, and standing in the middle of it, methodically working, is a 12-year-old boy they all recognize immediately, because there's only one kid in Konoha with hair and whisker marks like that. Isn't that the Uzumaki kid? The second Jonin mutters. Yuki holds up a hand for quiet, and the three of them stay in the shadow of the tree watching. What they see over the next 10 minutes is, frankly, not something any of them expected to witness on a routine patrol. The clones start returning. One by one, in staggered order, each one reporting something specific. A broken branch here, a discarded ration wrapper there, a faint chakra residue at the base of a tree, and Naruto, the real one, is standing in the center of the clearing, absorbing each report the moment the clone dispels, filtering the information, building something in his head that none of the watching Jonin can see, but all three of them can tell he's building, just from the way his expression keeps sharpening. He's triangulating, Yuki says quietly. He's what? Watch his hands. He's marking directions. He's not just collecting information, he's cross-referencing it, building a heading. They watch him do it. Watch a kid who, by every rumor circulating through the village, can barely perform a basic transformation jutsu without it exploding in his face, run a live intelligence-gathering operation with a level of procedural discipline that wouldn't look out of place in a Jonin briefing room. And then he does something that makes all three of them go very still. He sends 5 clones out again, not in the fanning search pattern from before, but in a tightening spiral, closing in on a specific heading northeast of the clearing. And roughly 90 seconds later, from somewhere deep in the trees, there's a shout, a scuffle, and the unmistakable sound of a chakra-enhanced blow connecting with something solid. Yuki is moving before she even finishes processing the decision to move. Her 2 teammates are half a step behind her. What they find, when they arrive, is this: a man, mid-30s, unremarkable build, wearing gear that's deliberately nondescript, no visible headband, no clan markings, pinned against a tree by 3 shadow clones, with a 4th standing a cautious distance away holding a kunai, and Naruto himself arriving on the scene seconds after the Jonin do, slightly out of breath, chakra visibly strained from the clone output. Don't move, Naruto is saying to the man, in a voice that has none of the loud, brash overconfidence people associate with him. It's flat. Controlled. The voice of someone running threat assessment in real time. You're outnumbered and you're not getting that scroll back. That's when Yuki notices the small unmarked scroll clutched, badly, one-handed, like he'd been trying to hide it under his jacket, in the stranger's grip. The man's eyes flick toward the 3 arriving Jonin, and something in his posture changes immediately, from cornered to calculating, weighing whether he can bluff or bolt, or fight his way clear. It's Yuki who ends the debate for him, Saban already in hand, closing the last few meters with the kind of speed that makes the decision for him. He's not getting past 4 shadow clones and an actual Jonin in a straight line, and he knows it. On your knees, she says. Hands where I can see them. He complies. Whoever he is, he's not stupid enough to fight odds like this. It takes another 20 minutes to get everyone back to the village gate, the stranger secured, the scroll recovered, and a runner sent ahead to alert the Hokage that something considerably bigger than a single traitorous Chunin has just unfolded on the north tree line. Through all of it, Naruto stays quiet in a way that unsettles Yuki more than his earlier competence did. He answers questions when asked. Yes, he found fabric on a branch. Yes, he noticed the footprints didn't match Mizuki's. Yes, he used shadow clones to search because it seemed like the fastest way to cover ground before the trail went cold. But he doesn't volunteer anything, doesn't preen or brag the way she half expected from everything she's heard about the loud, attention-hungry Uzumaki kid. He just looks tired. And a little confused about why 3 Jonin keep staring at him like he's grown a second head. Hey kid, Yuki says finally, as they approach the gate. What's your name? Naruto Uzumaki, he says automatically, and then, because some habits are apparently impossible to fully suppress even at 3 in the morning after the longest night of his life, adds, future Hokage. One of her teammates actually laughs, not mockingly, just surprised, and Yuki finds herself fighting down something that might, in a different context, have been the beginning of a smile. Right, she says. Well, Naruto Uzumaki, future Hokage, somebody upstairs is going to want to hear about tonight. She has no idea how right she is. The Hokage's office at 4 in the morning is a different place than it is during the day. The lanterns are dimmer, the air stiller, and Hiruzen Sarutobi, 3rd Hokage of Konoha, a man who has personally survived 3 shinobi wars and buried more students than he likes to think about, is sitting behind his desk in a robe over his sleepwear, reading a report by candlelight with an expression that has slowly, over the course of 10 minutes, shifted from tired irritation at being woken up to something considerably more alert. Irika's condition is stable. The medics got to him in time, the wound serious but not life-threatening, and that alone would have been enough to let Hiruzen go back to bed with a clear conscience. Mizuki's betrayal, while troubling, is also, grimly, not unprecedented. Konoha has lost shinobi to greed and outside manipulation before. It's ugly, it's a black mark on the village, but it's a known category of failure. What's sitting in front of him now is not a known category of anything. He reads Yuki's initial verbal report, hastily transcribed by the night clerk, full of the kind of details a good field jonin includes and a lazy one leaves out, 3 times before he sets it down. Subject conducted independent field investigation following combat engagement. Deployed approximately 20 shadow clones and coordinated search grid to recover physical evidence and track a second, previously unidentified party. Successfully triangulated suspect's position and initiated non-lethal restraint prior to arrival of patrol. Subject's tactical reasoning consistent with, and in several specifics exceeding, standard academy-level threat response protocol. Hiruzen sets down his pipe. Unlit, he hasn't had the heart to smoke it since his wife passed, keeps it more out of habit than anything, and rubs the bridge of his nose. He knows Naruto Uzumaki. Of course he knows Naruto Uzumaki. He's known him since the boy was an infant wrapped in blankets on the night the fox attacked, since the terrible decision to seal Kurama into a newborn instead of asking an adult to bear that weight, since years of watching from a careful, guilty distance as the village either ignored the boy or treated him with a coldness that had nothing to do with anything he'd actually done. Hiruzen has watched Naruto's academy scores. He's read the exasperated notes from instructor after instructor about a bright, well-meaning, catastrophically underperforming student who couldn't land a transformation jutsu to save his life and seemed constitutionally incapable of sitting still for a lecture. None of it, squares with the report in front of him. There are 2 possibilities, as far as Hiruzen can see. The first is that Yuki Mori, an experienced field jonin with an excellent service record, badly misjudged what she was watching in the dark at 3 in the morning after an adrenaline-heavy night. Possible. Not likely given her reputation, but possible. The second is that Naruto Uzumaki, the loudest, most visible failure in his academy year, a boy the entire village has spent 12 years underestimating in ways that keep Hiruzen up some nights with something uncomfortably close to guilt, has been hiding something. Deliberately. Consistently. For longer than one chaotic night could explain. Hiruzen has been Hokage a very long time. He did not get old in this job by ignoring inconvenient possibilities. He picks up a brush and writes 2 names on a slip of paper. Kakashi Hatake arrives at the Hokage's office roughly 20 minutes later, looking like a man who has been summoned out of bed at an hour, and is not thrilled about it, though with the mask covering half his face and his general air of unbothered detachment, it's hard to tell exactly how thrilled he ever looks about anything. The second name on Hiruzen's list arrives a few minutes after that, a broad-shouldered man with a bandana forehead protector and a scar-heavy face that has intimidated more prisoners than Hiruzen can count. If you've watched enough of these what-if stories, you already know this name, and you know exactly what kind of trouble it means when he shows up early in a chapter. Ibiki Marino, head of Konoha's torture and interrogation division, called in not for the interrogation of the mystery prisoner currently cooling his heels in a holding cell, though he'll get to that too, eventually, but for something Hiruzen considers, in this moment, considerably more delicate. You wanted to see us, Hokage-sama, Kakashi says with the mild, unbothered tone of a man who has been dragged out of bed more times than he'd like and stopped being surprised by it years ago. Hiruzen slides the field report across the desk without preamble. Kakashi reads it. His visible eye, the one not covered by the tilted Hittite, narrows slightly around the 3rd line. Ibiki, reading over his shoulder because Hiruzen only had 1 physical copy printed, makes a small skeptical noise in the back of his throat. This is Naruto Uzumaki, Kakashi says. It's not quite a question. It is. The Naruto Uzumaki who failed the Jonin exam 3 times. The same. Ibiki crosses his arms. With respect, Hokage-sama, field reports written by adrenaline-flooded jonin at 3 in the morning aren't exactly gold standard intelligence. People see what they want to see under stress. Could be the kid got lucky. Could be Amamori's report is dressing up a lucky guess as tactical genius because it makes for a better story. That was my first thought as well, Hiruzen admits. Which is why I want it verified before anyone acts on it. Kakashi. He turns to the younger man. You were assigned, tentatively, to evaluate the incoming genin teams for the upcoming rotation. I want you to keep that assignment, and I want you to observe Uzumaki specifically, more closely than you might otherwise, once teams are announced. Say nothing to him. Draw no conclusions in advance. Just watch. Kakashi's single visible eye studies the Hokage for a long moment. There's something in the old man's tone that goes beyond routine caution, something almost personal, though Kakashi, ever professional, doesn't push on it in front of Ibiki. And if the report holds up? Kakashi asks instead. If there's really something there? Hiruzen is quiet for a moment. Then we have a serious problem, he says finally. Not with the boy. With the fact that a village capable of producing that kind of tactical mind at 12 years old somehow never noticed it happening under its own nose. And with what certain people in this village would do, if they found out before I did. He doesn't say the name. He doesn't have to. Ibiki's jaw tightens slightly, and Kakashi's expression, for just a fraction of a second, loses its practiced boredom. They both know exactly who the Hokage means. While all of this is happening, while three of the most powerful people in the village are quietly rearranging their assumptions about him at 4:30 in the morning, Naruto Uzumaki is sitting on a bench, outside the interrogation wing, still in his torn, scorched jumpsuit, being handed a cup of warm tea by a Chunin attendant who clearly doesn't know what to do with him. He didn't ask for the tea. He's not really thinking about the tea. He's thinking about Irika, mostly, running the fight back through his head, wondering if he could have gotten to him faster, wondering if the wound is as bad as it looked. He's thinking about the headband sitting heavy and unfamiliar around his forehead, still slightly too big, still smelling faintly of blood where Irika pressed it into his hands. He's thinking about the fact that somewhere in this building, a stranger he chased down and pinned against a tree is being questioned about a scroll Naruto still doesn't fully understand, and he's wondering, in the vague, exhausted way a 12-year-old wonders about things at 5 in the morning after the biggest night of his life, whether he's in trouble. He genuinely doesn't realize what he did tonight is unusual. That's the thing that would probably surprise you most, if you'd been able to sit next to him on that bench and read his thoughts. He's not being modest. He's not hiding anything on purpose, not in this moment. He simply doesn't have the frame of reference to know that 20 coordinated shadow clones running a live search grid, cross-reference triangulation, and a calm, controlled restraint of an armed adult stranger is not, in fact, standard genin behavior. To Naruto, it's just what made sense. It's the same kind of problem-solving he's been doing alone, unsupervised, for 2 years, figuring out how to train faster than a normal person could, how to compress months of practice into weeks, how to squeeze every possible advantage out of a jutsu everyone else treats as a throwaway academy technique. Nobody ever told him that was strange. Because nobody was ever watching closely enough to notice. That's about to change. Around 6 in the morning, as pale light starts creeping over the Hokage monument, a Chunin messenger finds Naruto still sitting on that bench, half asleep, chin drooping toward his chest, tea gone cold in his hands. Uzumaki, the messenger says, and Naruto jolts awake, sloshing tea onto his already ruined jumpsuit. The Hokage wants a word. Naruto blinks, wipes his mouth, and follows, half convinced this is finally the part where someone tells him he's in trouble for the stolen scroll, for the fight, for something. He runs through a mental list of possible offenses on the walk up. Did he damage village property? Did he use a forbidden technique without authorization? Is this about the fact that he technically stole an S-rank document even if it was under false pretenses? And by the time he reaches the office door, he's fully braced for a lecture. What he gets instead is the third Hokage looking at him with an expression Naruto has genuinely never seen directed at himself before. Not pity. Not the practiced patience adults usually show him. Something closer to careful, deliberate curiosity. The look of a man recalculating something important. Sit down, Naruto, Hiruzen says, gesturing at the chair across the desk. You're not in trouble. I want to ask you some questions about tonight. Naruto sits cautiously, still braced. Tell me, Hiruzen says, folding his hands in front of him, how you decided to use your clones the way you did. Walk me through it. And Naruto, a little confused about why this matters, why the Hokage is asking him to explain a decision that felt, to him, completely obvious, starts talking. He explains the fabric on the branch, the footprints that didn't match, the decision to fan the clones out in a search grid instead of just wandering around looking for clues himself, because one person searching randomly is slow, but 20 people searching in a pattern covers way more ground and you don't miss stuff, and since the clones share what they see with me when they pop, it's basically like being in 20 places at once, so I figured, why not? He explains the triangulation almost apologetically, like it should be obvious. Once I had like 4 or 5 reports with directions on them, I could kind of tell where things were heading, so I just followed that. It's not that hard, really. It's not that hard, really. Hiruzen listens to all of it without interrupting, his expression giving away nothing, though internally something is clicking into place with the quiet, heavy finality of a lock turning. This isn't luck. This isn't an adrenaline-fueled fluke that happened to look good on paper. This is a boy who has been running his own private curriculum for years, unsupervised, unrecognized, and has developed instincts that Hiruzen doesn't want to think the word yet, doesn't want to commit to it out loud, but the word is sitting right there at the edge of his thoughts regardless. Jonin-level. Not in raw combat power. Not yet probably, though even that might be closer than anyone assumes. But in the thing that actually separates a Jonin from a Genin, the thing the Academy exam barely even tests for, the ability to gather incomplete information under pressure, synthesize it correctly, and act on it decisively, without an adult telling him what to do. Naruto, Hiruzen says slowly, when the boy finally winds down. How long have you been training the way you just described? Using the clones like that, for more than just the exam technique? Naruto shifts in his seat, and for the first time since he sat down, something flickers across his face that looks almost like guilt. Like he's been caught doing something he wasn't sure he was allowed to do. A couple years, he admits. I know it's probably against the rules to make that many, nobody was really teaching me stuff, so I figured I'd teach myself. I didn't hurt anybody with it or anything, I just used it to practice. It's not against the rules, Hiruzen says gently, and watches some of the tension drain out of the boy's shoulders. I'm not upset with you, Naruto. I'm impressed. More than impressed. Naruto blinks. Really? Really? Hiruzen is quiet for a moment, weighing something, and then he leans forward slightly, his voice dropping into a register that's less Hokage dressing academy graduate, and more old man carefully choosing his next words. I want to ask you to do something for me. Something unusual. Can you keep a secret, Naruto? A real one, not a prank, not something to tell your friends later. An actual, serious secret. And this, right here, this exact moment, an exhausted 12-year-old sitting across a desk from the most powerful man in the village at 6 in the morning, being asked if he can keep a secret, is the hinge this entire story swings on. Because you already know what Naruto says? Of course you do. This is a kid who spent his whole life desperate for anyone in a position of authority to trust him with something, anything, real. Yeah, he says, without hesitation, sitting up a little straighter. Yeah, of course. What kind of secret? Hiruzen studies him for a long moment. Outside, the sun is fully up now, spilling gold light across the Hokage monument, across the village Naruto has spent his entire life trying to prove himself worthy of. Somewhere across the village, Iruka is recovering in a hospital bed, unaware that the conversation happening right now will reshape the next several years of his favorite student's life. Somewhere in the interrogation wing, a stranger with an unmarked scroll is about to reveal, under Ibiki's exacting, patient questioning, exactly who he was working for, and it is not, as it turns out, a story that ends with Mizuki. Somewhere in the village, a council that does not yet know any of this is about to find out that its self-appointed protector of Konoha's shadows has a source inside the academy, and that source has just been captured. But none of that is what this chapter is about. This chapter is about one sentence, 6 words, spoken quietly across a desk by an old man who has spent 30 years learning exactly how heavy that kind of sentence can be. I don't know yet, Hiruzen says finally. That's what I need to find out. Which is why 3 nights from now, I need you to come to this office, alone, telling no one, Not even Irika once he's recovered, and take a test. A test? Naruto's face does something complicated, wary, a little defensive, the muscle memory of years of academy exams where the test was rigged against him before it started. What kind of test? Hiruzen almost smiles. Almost. There's too much weight behind his eyes for it to fully form. The kind, he says slowly, that no one your age has ever been given before. And the kind that, depending on how you do, might change everything about who you get to be in this village. He doesn't elaborate further. Doesn't explain the words Jonin proficiency trial. Doesn't mention the sealed authorization he's going to have to draft in the next few hours. Doesn't mention Danzo's name once, though it sits behind every careful word he chooses. He just slides a plain, unmarked slip of paper across the desk. No official seal, no village insignia, nothing that could be traced back if it fell into the wrong hands. With a date, a time, and 3 words written in careful brushstroke. Tell no one. Naruto stares down at it. Turns it over in his hands the same careful way he examined that scrap of fabric in the forest a few hours earlier, like he's already, instinctively, starting to run threat assessment on a piece of paper. Okay, he says finally, quietly, and there's something different in his voice now, not the loud, boastful confidence people expect from him, but something steadier. Older, almost. I won't tell anyone. Hiruzen nods slowly. Go home, Naruto. Sleep. You've earned it. Naruto stands, tucks the slip of paper carefully into his pocket, the same pocket where the mystery scroll had been sitting a few hours earlier before Ibiki confiscated it for questioning, and heads for the door. He pauses there, hand on the frame, and looks back. Hokage Gigi, he says. Is Irika-sensei really gonna be okay? He's going to be fine, Hiruzen says, and means it. You saved his life tonight, Naruto. Whatever else happens, remember that part. Naruto nods, and something in his exhausted, scraped-up face settles, just slightly, before he steps out into the hallway and the door closes behind him. Hiruzen sits alone in his office for a long moment after the boy leaves, staring at the space where he'd been sitting, and finally allows himself to say the word he'd been avoiding out loud. Jonin, he murmurs, to the empty room. 12 years old? And nobody noticed. He picks up his brush again, pulls a fresh sheet of paper toward him, and begins drafting an authorization request that does not officially exist, one that will require Kakashi's evaluation, Ibiki's proctoring, and a level of secrecy that, if it ever became public, could tear the village's political balance apart in ways he doesn't fully want to think through yet. 3 days from now, in a windowless room beneath this very building, Naruto Uzumaki is going to be tested against the standard no genin his age has ever faced. And he has absolutely no idea what he's walking into. Chapter 2, The Room with No Windows. 3 days is a long time to keep a secret when you're 12 years old and every part of your brain is built for talking, for bragging, for turning even a scraped knee into a story with sound effects. So if you're wondering how Naruto Uzumaki, a boy who once announced his own bathroom breaks to the entire academy classroom, managed to sit on the single biggest secret of his life for 72 straight hours without telling a soul, the honest answer is, barely. He visited Irika in the hospital the next morning, sat by his bed for 2 hours, and did not mention the slip of paper folded up in his jacket pocket even once, even when Irika, groggy, bandaged, propped up on pillows, asked him what he'd been up to. He told his classmates, when a few of them found him at Ichiraka's the day after that, some story about helping clean up damage from the whole traitor thing, which was technically true and also nowhere close to the actual truth. He lay awake at night running the words tell no one through his head like a mantra, turning them over the same careful way he turned over that scrap of fabric in the forest, trying to figure out what kind of test doesn't even get a name. By the 3rd night, he's exhausted in a way that has nothing to do with chakra. And that's exactly the state he's in when he slips out of his apartment a little after 10 p.m. Hood up, moving through back alleys instead of main streets, not because anyone told him to be sneaky about it, but because some instinct he can't quite name tells him that whatever this is, it's the kind of thing that goes wrong if the wrong person notices you walking toward it. He has no idea, yet, exactly how right that instinct is. If this is your first time watching one of these, welcome. Go ahead and hit subscribe, because tonight is the night Konoha finds out exactly what it's been sitting on for 12 years, and you do not want to miss how this village reacts when the answer turns out to be so much bigger than anyone was prepared for. Let's get into it. The Hokage Tower at 10:30 at night is nothing like the Hokage Tower during the day. During the day it's full of Chunin runners and clan representatives and the low, constant hum of a village's bureaucracy grinding through its daily business. At night it's a different building entirely. Dim, mostly empty, lit by scattered lanterns that throw long shadows down hallways. Naruto's only ever seen crowded and loud. A single ANBU operative meets him at the side entrance, wordless, a plain cat mask catching the lantern light, and leads him not up toward the Hokage's office where he expected to go, but down, through a service corridor, past the heavy door that requires a hand seal to open, down a narrow stone stairwell that gets progressively colder and quieter the further they descend. Naruto doesn't ask questions. He's turning something over in his head, actually, a thought that's been nagging at him since he got the note 3 days ago, that whatever this test is, it's clearly not something that happens in a normal room, with normal witnesses, following normal procedure. And if there's one thing 2 years of secret, unsupervised training has taught him, it's that the things nobody wants witnessed are usually the things that matter most. The ANBU stops in front of a plain wooden door at the end of a windowless corridor, and gestures for him to go in. The room on the other side is small. Stone walls, a single long table, 4 chairs on one side and one on the other, clearly meant for him, and lantern light that flickers slightly against walls thick enough to swallow sound completely. No windows, like the note promised, though Naruto hadn't actually processed what that meant until right now, standing in a space that feels less like an office and more like a vault. 3 people are already seated at the long table. The Hokage, robed and serious in a way Naruto's never quite seen him look before, not even during the tensest moments of the graduation exam fiasco. Kakashi Hatake, arms crossed, one eye visible above his mask, watching Naruto with an expression that gives away absolutely nothing, which, if you know anything about Kakashi, is somehow more unnerving than if he'd looked openly skeptical. And a third man Naruto doesn't recognize at all, lean, sharp-featured, with a lazy slouch to his posture that seems completely at odds with the intensity in his eyes, a Senbon needle resting between his teeth in a way that somehow reads as both relaxed and dangerous at the same time. That third man is Shikaku Nara, head of the Nara clan and Konoha's Jonin commander, the man responsible for battlefield strategy across the entire village, the person whose desk troop deployments and mission viability assessments cross before anyone else's. If you've watched enough of these alternate scenarios, you know exactly what it means when someone with a mind like his shows up to grade a test. It means the test isn't about chakra output or how many kunai you can land. It means the test is about whether you can think. Sit down, Naruto, Hiruzen says. Naruto sits. The chair is hard and a little too big for him, and for a second he feels exactly as young and out of place as he actually is, 12 years old, in a stone room with 3 of the most experienced shinobi in the village, about to take a test with no name. Before we begin, Hiruzen continues, I want to be very clear about what happens in this room. Everything discussed here, everything you're asked to do, is classified. Not Academy classified, not Genin classified. This trial does not officially exist. Do you understand? Naruto nods, throat a little dry. Yeah. I understand. Good. The Hokage glances at Shikaku. Commander Nara will administer the first phase. Kakashi will administer the second. I will observe both. Naruto, I want you to answer honestly, and think it through the way you actually would in the field, not the way you think we want to hear it. Do you understand the difference? I think so, Naruto says slowly. You don't want me to guess what the right answer is supposed to be. You want to know what I'd actually do. Something flickers across Shikaku's face, not quite surprise, but close to it, the look of a man recalibrating an initial estimate. He pulls the Senbon from his mouth and sets a thin folder on the table between them. All right, kid, he says, voice carrying that same lazy drawl Naruto will later learn is basically his default setting, no matter how sharp the mind running underneath it. Let's see what you've got. Here's the thing about the written portion of a standard academy exam, the one Naruto failed 3 times, the one that measures whether you know the hand seals for a transformation jutsu, and can recite the difference between a genjutsu and a ninjutsu on command. It's a memory test. It rewards kids who sit still and study, who've had someone at home quizzing them on vocabulary since they were 6 years old. This is not that test. Shikako slides the folder across the table, and inside it, Naruto finds a single sheet of paper with a scenario written across the top in tight, economical handwriting. You are field commander of a 4-person unit on a C-rank escort mission that has escalated. 2 enemy shinobi of unknown affiliation have engaged your team. 1 teammate is down, unconscious, non-critical. Your client is unarmed and immobile with fear. You have exhausted half your kunai supply and roughly 40% of your chakra. Reinforcements are 2 hours out at minimum. What do you do in the next 60 seconds and why? There's no multiple choice. No word bank. Just a blank half-page underneath, waiting. Naruto stares at it for a long moment, and you can watch, because all 3 examiners are watching, closely. The way you'd watch a pot that might either boil over or do absolutely nothing. The exact moment his face shifts from this is scary to this is a puzzle, which, if you've been paying attention since chapter 1, is exactly the switch that flips inside him whenever something clicks into a shape he can actually work with. He picks up the brush. He doesn't write for almost 2 full minutes, long enough that Kakashi shifts slightly in his seat, long enough that Shikaka's eyes narrow with the beginning of something that might be doubt, and then, all at once, Naruto starts writing, fast, methodical, the words coming out in a rush like he's not so much composing an answer as transcribing something he already worked out in his head and is just now getting down on paper. Down teammate isn't the priority yet. They're stable, not bleeding out, so moving them mid-fight just makes them a bigger target. Client is the real weak point because they're panicking and immobile, which means the enemy can use them as leverage even without touching them directly. First thing I do is get between the client and the enemy's angle of approach, not retreat with them, because retreating shows the enemy I think I'm losing, and that changes how aggressive they get. Then I use clones. Not to fight, to lie. 2 clones circle wide, loud, obvious, chakra signature dialed up on purpose so the enemy reads them as reinforcements arriving. Real threat assessment takes a few seconds even for good shinobi, and a few seconds is enough to make them hesitate or split their attention. While they're deciding whether that's real backup, I move the client behind cover and get eyes on my down teammate without exposing my back. If the enemy commits to the fake reinforcements, I get an opening to disengage completely, not fight, run, because 2 enemies against a team that's already lost 40% chakra and 1 body isn't a fight I should be trying to win, it's a fight I should be trying to survive. If they don't fall for the fake out and come straight at me instead, I fall back toward my down teammate and use them as an anchor point. Bad guys usually try to finish a kill they think is easy before pressing an active threat, so if they go for my unconscious teammate first, that buys me the opening to hit them from an angle they're not expecting. The 60-second goal isn't winning. It's not dying and not letting the client die, long enough for those 2 hours to actually happen. He sets the brush down. Silence in the room stretches out for a moment that feels, to Naruto, uncomfortably long. He glances up, half convinced he's about to be told he got it completely wrong, that real shinobi don't think like this, that he's overcomplicated a simple question and missed some obvious textbook answer everyone else would have known. Shikako picks up the paper. Reads it once. Reads it again, slower, and this time there's no hiding the shift in his expression. The lazy, half-bored posture straightens by degrees as he reads. Saban forgotten between 2 fingers. Hokage-sama, he says quietly, without looking up. You should see this. He passes the sheet across. Hiruzen reads it. Kakashi leans over to read it as well, and for a moment none of the 3 adults say anything at all, which, if you know anything about how a room full of experienced shinobi normally reacts to Jonin-level work, is itself a kind of answer. That's a mission abort decision tree, Shikako says finally, mostly to Hiruzen, though he's still watching Naruto with an expression that's part scrutiny, part something closer to genuine curiosity. Priority triage on the client over the injured teammate, a deception-based delay tactic using clone chakra signature manipulation, and a contingency branch depending on enemy behavior. That's not a Jonin answer. Hell, that's not even a fresh Chunin's answer half the time. That's the kind of decision-making I'd expect from a Jonin with 4-5 years of field experience. I just kinda thought about what would actually happen, Naruto says, a little defensively, like he's bracing for the answer to somehow be wrong anyway. Isn't that the point? That is exactly the point, Shikaka says, and something in his voice, dry, but not unkind, makes Naruto relax half an inch in his seat. Most people your age write down what they think sounds brave. You wrote down what actually keeps people alive. Those aren't the same thing, and knowing the difference is the entire job. Hiruzen says nothing, but his eyes, when Naruto glances at him, are doing something complicated. Pride and worry sitting right next to each other in a way Naruto is too young, still, to fully read. There are 4 more scenarios in the folder. Resource allocation under a supply shortage. A hostage negotiation with a time-limited bluff. A retreat versus hold decision with incomplete intelligence about enemy numbers. A scenario, near the end, about what to do when a superior officer gives an order Naruto's character believes is tactically wrong. A question that, Naruto will learn much later, is specifically designed to test obedience versus independent judgment. One of the hardest lines in the entire shinobi hierarchy to walk correctly. His answer to that last one, that you follow the order unless following it gets people killed for no strategic gain, and even then you say so out loud first instead of just quietly disobeying, because a team that doesn't trust its own communication falls apart faster than one bad call ever could, is the one that finally gets Kakashi to speak for the first time since the phase began. Where did you learn that? Kakashi asks, quiet, genuinely curious rather than testing. That's not something they teach at the academy. Naruto shrugs, a little uncomfortable under the sudden attention. Nobody taught me. I just watch stuff. When Iruka-sensei gets overruled by other teachers on stuff he thinks is wrong for the class, he still does what they say. But he always tells us why he disagreed first, so we know it wasn't because he agreed with it. Figured that's probably how it should work everywhere. Kakashi's visible eye doesn't change expression, exactly, but something behind it does. The written phase takes 40 minutes. The practical phase, which starts almost immediately after with barely a break for Naruto to stretch his cramping writing hand, takes considerably longer, and it's the part that, 3 days from now, is going to end up in a report so unusual that Ibiki Marino will personally recommend it be filed under a classification normally reserved for enemy defection intelligence. They move to a different room, larger, still windowless, still soundproofed, but this one's been cleared out and reconfigured into something that looks almost like a miniature training ground. False walls and obstacles arranged into a rough approximation of village terrain. Kakashi steps forward for this part, and something about the way he rolls his shoulders, the small shift in his stance, tells Naruto this is where things stop being a paper test and start being something closer to what he's actually good at. Here's the scenario, Kakashi says. You're commanding a 4-person unit. I'll be feeding you 3 subordinates through summoned proxies, low-level constructs that'll follow your directives but won't think for themselves. Your objective is to secure a target at the far end of this room. He gestures toward a marked crate near the back wall, and extract, while I introduce complications along the way. This isn't a fight you're expected to win outright. It's a command exercise. I want to see how you direct people who aren't you. Naruto's stomach does something complicated at that. Fighting, he can do. Fighting is instinct, is chakra and clones and momentum. Commanding is different. Commanding means being responsible for choices other people make based on what he tells them, and something about that responsibility settles heavier on his shoulders than any physical threat has all night. Kakashi performs a summoning seal, and 3 low chakra constructs shimmer into existence. Vaguely humanoid, faceless, clearly not real people but built to respond to verbal commands with basic competence, moving and reacting like disciplined shinobi even without independent judgment behind them. They'll do what you tell them, Kakashi says. Exactly what you tell them. No more, no less. Choose your words carefully. The exercise starts simple. Naruto sends 1 construct wide to scout the flank, keeps 2 close as he advances toward the crate, watching for the complications Kakashi promised. The first one arrives about 90 seconds in, a trio of low-level clone opponents, weak individually, converging from 2 directions at once. Naruto's read on this, not a fight to win through force, a fight to win through positioning. He directs 1 construct to hold a choke point in the makeshift terrain, forcing the opposing clones to funnel through a narrow gap instead of surrounding his team. sends the second construct to flank wide and hit the enemy cluster from an angle they're not expecting, and personally engages the front, using his own shadow clones, 3 of them, deployed with the same casual efficiency he's shown all night, to reinforce the choke point while directing traffic. It goes well. Too well, maybe, because about 2 minutes in, Kakashi introduces the actual test. One of the constructs, the flanking one, the one Naruto sent to hit the enemy cluster from the side, goes down. Kakashi simply announces it, flat, that unit is disabled. Non-lethal, but out of the fight. And this is the moment the entire trial has actually been building toward, though Naruto doesn't know it yet. Because here's what a genin does when a teammate goes down mid-fight. In Kakashi's extensive professional experience of watching genin teams fall apart, they panic. They break formation to check on the fallen unit, or they freeze, or they get angry and overextend trying to avenge someone who technically isn't even dead. Naruto does none of those things. Copy, he says, actually says it out loud, like he's talking to a real radio, which is a small detail that makes Shikaka's eyebrows lift slightly from where he's watching near the wall. Unit 2, hold position, don't advance to help, you'll just get flanked too. Unit 3, this to the remaining construct near the choke point, collapse in, tighten the formation around the crate. We're not clearing the room anymore, we're not trying to be heroes, we're securing the objective and getting out before this gets worse. He redirects his own clones, pulling the formation tighter, prioritizing a straight line toward the extraction point over continued engagement with the remaining enemy clones. It's not flashy. It's not the kind of thing that would look good in a story where the hero cuts through a dozen enemies single-handedly. It's the kind of decision that keeps a team alive, made instantly, under pressure, by someone whose first instinct, genuinely, instinctively, was protect the mission, protect the people I still have, worry about the rest later. Kakashi calls the exercise about 4 minutes after that, once Naruto's construct-led unit successfully extracts the marked crate to the designated exit point with all 3 surviving members intact. For a long moment, nobody says anything. Again, Kakashi says finally, and there's something in his voice that wasn't there before, an edge of actual interest, sharpened past the professional detachment he walked in with. Different scenario. This time your objective is retreat under fire, no crate to grab, just get your people out. I'm going to make it considerably harder. They run it again. And again after that, 5 separate simulations over the course of nearly an hour, each one escalating, each one throwing a different kind of complication at him, a hostage variable, a terrain collapse, a scenario where Kakashi deliberately gives him bad intelligence to see whether Naruto catches the discrepancy before it costs him a unit. In that last one, he does catch it, notices, mid-command, that a reported enemy position doesn't line up with the sound cues Kakashi's been feeding into the simulation, and adjusts his formation half a second before the ambush would have caught his flank completely exposed. By the time Kakashi finally calls a full stop, all 3 adults in the room are quiet in a way that has stopped being about testing and started being about something closer to recalibrating everything they thought they understood about the boy standing in front of them, sweat-soaked and breathing hard. Chakra reserves clearly strained but nowhere close to empty. Hokage-sama, Kakashi says slowly, turning to face Hiruzen directly for the first time in nearly an hour. I don't think there's any ambiguity left here. Shikaku exhales through his teeth, Saban rolling between his fingers. Kid makes calls under pressure like someone who's already lost people and learned from it. Except he hasn't, not really, not in the field. That instinct is just there. Built in. I've seen Jonin candidates choke on easier versions of what he just handled without blinking. Naruto, still catching his breath near the center of the room, looks between the 3 of them with an expression that's somewhere between exhausted and uncertain, not fully sure yet what verdict is about to land. Did I? He starts, then stops, tries again. Did I pass? Whatever this was? Hiruzen rises slowly from his chair, and for a moment the old man just looks at him, really looks at him. The way you'd look at someone you thought you understood completely, and are only now realizing you'd barely scratched the surface of. Naruto, he says quietly. Do you know what rank is normally required for someone to command troops under fire, redirect a failing formation without breaking, and adapt to false intelligence in real time? Naruto shakes his head slowly. Jonin, Hiruzen says. That is, without exaggeration, Jonin-level battlefield command. You just demonstrated it. Twice, actually, once on paper, once under live pressure, in front of 3 of the most experienced shinobi in this village. The words land in the room like something physical. Naruto's mouth opens, closes. Whatever reaction he was braced for tonight, a lecture, a warning, some kind of official punishment for the 2 years of unsupervised training he half expected to get in trouble for, this was not it. Not even close. I don't, he starts, and for once in his life, Naruto Uzumaki is actually, genuinely lost for words. That doesn't make sense. I failed the academy exam like 3 times. I can't even do a normal transformation without it exploding half the time, because the academy exam measures things you happen to be bad at, Shikaku says bluntly, and completely fails to measure the thing you're apparently very, very good at. That happens more than you'd think. Standardized tests are lazy that way. Kakashi is quiet for a moment longer, studying Naruto with an expression that's harder to read than the others, something that might be reassessing every assumption he'd walked into this room carrying, layered underneath something that looks, if you squint, almost like the beginning of respect. For what it's worth, Kakashi finally says, in 6 years of active duty, I've watched exactly 2 Jonin-age candidates handle pressure like that. You'd recognize one of their names if I told you. I'm not going to, because it's not relevant. But I want you to understand what I just said isn't flattery. It's an observation. Naruto doesn't fully know what to do with any of this. He's spent his entire life being told, implicitly and explicitly, by teachers and classmates and half the adults in this village, that he's behind, slower, dumber, less capable than everyone around him, a screw-up wearing a headband he had to fight for harder than anyone else in his class. And now 3 of the most respected shinobi in Konoha are sitting in a windowless room at midnight telling him, with total sincerity, that he just displayed skills most people don't develop until years into an actual shinobi career. It doesn't feel like winning. It feels, if anything, disorienting, like the floor shifted slightly under a version of himself he thought he understood. So what happens now? He asks quietly. Hiruzen exchanges a glance with Kakashi and Shikaku, a silent conversation that passes between the 3 of them in less than a second. The kind of unspoken understanding that comes from decades of working together in rooms exactly like this one. Now, Hiruzen says, we need to talk about what this actually means. And I need you to understand, before I say anything else, that what I'm about to offer you is not a reward. It's a responsibility, a heavy one. Possibly the heaviest thing anyone has ever asked of someone your age in this village's history. He pauses, and in that pause something shifts in the room, the warm, cautiously proud atmosphere of a moment ago cooling into something more serious, more careful. There is a reason, Hiruzen continues slowly, that I administered tonight's trial in a windowless room, at midnight, with no official record and no witnesses beyond the 3 of us. And it isn't because I doubted you'd fail. That's when the door behind them opens. It's not one of the ANBU who escorted Naruto down here. It's Ibiki Marino, and one look at his face, grim, tight around the eyes in a way that has nothing to do with tonight's exam and everything to do with something happening somewhere else entirely, tells all 3 seated adults that whatever he's about to say, it isn't good. Hokage-sama, Ibiki says, and his voice carries the flat, controlled urgency of a man delivering news he wishes he didn't have to. The prisoner talked. I need 5 minutes. Privately. Hiruzen's expression shifts instantly, decades of experience folding away the pride and warmth of the last hour in favor of something sharper, more alert. He glances at Naruto, then at Kakashi and Shikaku. Wait here, he tells them all, and follows Ibiki out into the corridor, the heavy door swinging shut behind them with a sound that seems, in the sudden quiet of the room, unusually final. Naruto stands there in the middle of the makeshift training space, sweat-cooled and exhausted and still trying to process the fact that he apparently just displayed Jonin-level command instincts in front of the village's most powerful shinobi, and looks over at Kakashi and Shikaku with a question written plainly across his face. What was that about? He asks. Kakashi doesn't answer right away. He's looking at the closed door with an expression Naruto's never seen on him before, the careful, guarded stillness of someone doing quick, unpleasant math in his head. I don't know, Kakashi says finally, which might even be true. But given the timing, I don't think it's a coincidence. Outside in the corridor, out of earshot, Hibiki is telling Hiruzen exactly what 3 days of careful, patient interrogation finally pried loose from the stranger Naruto tracked down and pinned to a tree 3 nights ago. A name, a chain of command, a purpose for the second scroll that has nothing to do with Mizuki's greed and everything to do with a shadow organization operating inside Konoha that officially doesn't exist. And somewhere in that name, that chain of command, is a piece of information that's about to make everything Hiruzen just decided in that windowless room significantly, dangerously more complicated. Chapter 3, A Rank with No Name. Here's a question worth sitting with for a second before we dive back in. What do you do when the biggest secret you've ever been trusted with turns out to be smaller than the secret standing right behind it? Because that's exactly the position Hiruzen Sarutobi finds himself in, standing in a windowless corridor beneath his own tower at nearly 1 in the morning, listening to Ibiki Marino explain, in careful, clinical detail, exactly what 3 days of patient interrogation pulled out of the stranger Naruto Uzumaki tracked down and pinned to a tree. If you're just joining us, welcome. Go ahead and subscribe, hit that bell, because tonight the Hokage is about to learn that Naruto's Jonin-level trial performance isn't the only thing that changed in the last 72 hours. There's a second problem sitting right behind it, and it's about to decide how deep this secret has to go. Let's get into it. Talk to me, Hiruzen says, and there's none of the warmth left in his voice that had been there minutes earlier, watching Naruto command constructs through a live fire simulation. This is a different register entirely. The voice of a man who has run this village through 2 wars and knows exactly how fast good news can curdle into something dangerous. Ibiki doesn't waste time on preamble. He's a man who has spent his entire career learning that the fastest way to deliver bad news is also the kindest way. The prisoner isn't a mercenary, he says. He's not freelance, and he's not working directly for Mizuki, whatever Mizuki told himself to justify going along with it. He's a courier, low level. Didn't know much beyond his immediate task, which is standard operating procedure for the kind of network we're dealing with. Compartmentalized information. Nobody in the chain knows more than they need to. What was his task? Retrieve the forbidden scroll from Mizuki once the theft was complete, deliver it to a secondary handoff point outside the village, no questions asked, no names exchanged. Ibiki's jaw tightens slightly, which tells us 2 things. First, Mizuki wasn't the mastermind here. He was a tool being used by someone with a much longer reach, someone patient enough to cultivate a disgruntled Chunin over what our intelligence suggests has been at least a year, maybe longer. Second, whoever's running this operation went to considerable lengths to make sure that if the courier got caught, which he did, there'd be nothing traceable on him. No markings. No affiliation. Standard tradecraft for exactly one kind of organization operating inside this village. Hiruzen's face doesn't move, but something behind his eyes goes very still, very cold. Root, he says quietly. It's not a question. I can't confirm that officially, Ibiki says, choosing his words with the precision of a man who knows exactly how dangerous a wrong accusation could be, even spoken in a private corridor at 1 in the morning. The methodology matches. The compartmentalization matches. The complete absence of anything traceable matches. But he never used a name, never confirmed an organization, and honestly, Hokage-sama, he might not even know who he's really working for. That's the whole design. That's what makes people like him useful and people like whoever's actually running this nearly impossible to touch. Hiruzen closes his eyes for a long moment. You have to understand something about the position he's in right now, because it's the thing that's about to shape every decision he makes for the rest of this story. Officially, Root was disbanded years ago, dissolved by his own order, folded back into the regular shinobi corps, its methods declared incompatible with the village Konoha was supposed to be. Unofficially, Hiruzen has never been entirely certain that dissolution was as complete as it looked on paper. Danzo Shimura is not a man who abandons an asset simply because he's told to. He's a man who buries it deeper. And if some remnant of that organization has spent the better part of a year quietly cultivating an academy Chunin, patiently building toward a theft of S-rank forbidden techniques, using a child, Naruto, as an unwitting delivery mechanism to smoke the scroll out of the vault, then there's a version of tonight's events that looks very different from the one Hiruzen has spent the last hour celebrating. There's something else, Ibiki says, and his voice drops lower, more careful still. The prisoner mentioned, offhand, not under direct questioning, which usually means it's true rather than performed, that part of his handler's original assessment of the Uzumaki boy was that he was, quote, unremarkable, easily manipulated, adequate leverage. That assessment was made months ago. Before tonight. Hiruzen's eyes open. They were watching him, he says slowly. Before any of this happened. Before Mizuki. Someone in that network had already looked at Naruto and filed him away as a potential asset, based on nothing more than what the rest of the village already believed about him. That's my read, Ibiki confirms. Which means whatever assessment they had on file is about to be very, very wrong. And organizations like this one don't like being wrong. They like being first to correct the record. There's a long silence in the corridor. Somewhere behind the heavy door they've stepped away from, Naruto Uzumaki is standing in a repurposed training room, still catching his breath, still trying to process the fact that 3 of the most powerful shinobi in the village just told him he displayed Jonin-level command instincts, completely unaware that the conversation happening 20 feet away is about to determine whether that revelation gets to stay a private triumph or becomes a matter of village security. If word gets out, Hiruzen says finally, thinking out loud now, working through the calculus with the weary precision of a man who has made exactly this kind of decision too many times in his life, that a 12-year-old academy graduate just displayed abilities on par with a seasoned Jonin. During the same week his name is already circulating because of the Mizuki incident. Every faction with an interest in this village is going to want to know why. Some of them for good reasons. Most of them not. And if it reaches root, Ibiki says quietly, finishing the thought, or whatever's left of it, they're not going to see a promising young shinobi worth nurturing. They're going to see an asset worth acquiring. By whatever means that takes. Hiruzen is quiet for a long moment, staring at the closed door. He asked me tonight, he says finally, whether he passed. As if the only thing at stake was a test score. He shakes his head slowly. I need to go back in there and explain to a 12-year-old boy that the reward for being extraordinary is that it makes him a target. That's not a conversation I ever wanted to have with any child in this village. Least of all him. With respect, Hokage-sama, Ibiki says, you don't have the luxury of not having it. Better it comes from you, tonight, in a controlled room with people who care what happens to him, than from someone else, later, in a room that isn't. Hiruzen nods slowly, straightens his robes, and reaches for the door handle. Draft me a full report, he says. Classified beyond even standard restricted access. I want to know everything you can find out about the prisoner's handler, and I want it quietly, without alerting anyone who might report back that we're looking. Already in motion, Ibiki says, and with that, he's gone, disappearing back down the corridor the way he came, leaving Hiruzen alone outside the door with the weight of a decision he's about to have to explain to someone barely old enough to understand the full shape of what it costs. Back inside the room, Naruto is sitting on the edge of the low platform where the crate exercise took place, legs dangling, still working through the strange, disorienting high of being told, by people whose opinions actually matter, that he's good at something. Genuinely good. Not good for a screw-up or good considering, but good, full stop, the kind of good that gets you compared favorably to seasoned professionals. It's a feeling he's not entirely sure what to do with. You're quiet, Kakashi observes, leaning against the wall a few feet away, arms crossed, visible eye studying Naruto with an expression that's shifted, subtly but unmistakably, since the trial began. That's new. I'm thinking, Naruto says, a little defensively. About what? Naruto is quiet for a second, turning something over. About how nobody ever asked me those questions before, he says finally. Like, the whole time at the academy, everything was here's the hand seal, memorize it, do it right or fail. Nobody ever asked me what I'd actually do if something went wrong. And that's the part I'm good at, apparently. Nobody even knew to check. Shikaku, still seated near the wall with his senbon rolling absently between 2 fingers, makes a low sound of agreement. Story of my life. Watching this village's education system, he mutters. Half the kids who wash out of that academy could probably run circles around some of our chunin in the right kind of test. We just don't build tests for the right kind of thinking most of the time. Before Naruto can respond, the door opens and Hiruzen steps back in, and something in his bearing, a kind of careful heaviness that wasn't there a few minutes ago, makes both Kakashi and Shikaka straighten, slightly, and makes Naruto's stomach drop, because even at 12 years old, even after a lifetime of being underestimated, he's sharp enough to read a room, and this room just changed. Naruto, Hiruzen says, settling into the chair he'd vacated earlier, gesturing for the boy to come sit across from him again. I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully, because it changes what I'm about to offer you. Naruto sits. Kakashi and Shikaku exchange a glance and move closer, no longer casual observers but present, attentive, clearly anticipating that whatever's coming next requires the full room. The man you caught in the forest 3 nights ago, Hiruzen begins, was not working alone, and he was not working for Mizuki. He was working for someone considerably more dangerous, an organization that operates entirely outside official channels, that I have spent years trying to be certain no longer exists in this village. Tonight, I learned that certainty may have been premature. He explains it carefully, in language calibrated for a 12-year-old but without softening the actual substance of the threat, the compartmentalized network, the patient cultivation of Mizuki as a tool. The assessment filed on Naruto himself months before any of this happened, an assessment that called him adequate leverage based on nothing more than the same dismissive judgment the entire village has carried about him for years. Naruto listens to all of it with a stillness that surprises everyone in the room, including himself. It's not the reaction of a scared kid, it's the reaction of someone doing the same kind of real-time threat assessment he demonstrated less than an hour ago, just applied now to a threat that happens to be aimed at him personally instead of a training simulation. They were watching me, he says slowly, when Hiruzen finishes. Before tonight. Before any of this. They just thought I was easy to use because everyone already thinks that. Yes, Hiruzen says quietly. There's no comfortable way to say it, so he doesn't try. And now that I did, whatever I did tonight, if they find out, they're gonna stop thinking I'm easy to use and start thinking I'm worth grabbing instead. Shikaka's eyebrows lift slightly at that. It's not a question. It's the correct conclusion, reached in about 4 seconds, by a 12-year-old who was told about a shadowy organization for the first time less than a minute ago. That's precisely the concern, Hiruzen says. Which is why what I'm about to offer you has to come with conditions that are non-negotiable, and I need you to understand exactly why before you agree to any of it. He lays it out, piece by piece, and this is the part of the story worth slowing down for, because it's the hinge the entire rest of this series swings on. Naruto passed the trial. Genuinely, unambiguously, by every metric Shikaku, Kakashi, and Hiruzen himself can measure. His tactical reasoning and command instincts sit at a level the village's own promotion standards would classify as Jonin. That much isn't in question. What's in question is what to do with that information. If I promote you openly, Hiruzen says, the entire village learns within a week that Naruto Uzumaki, 12 years old, 3-time academy failure by public record, is secretly a Jonin. Do you understand what that would do? Every faction in this village with an interest in powerful young shinobi would suddenly have a reason to pay very close attention to you. Every council member who's spent years dismissing you would have to explain why they missed it, and some of them would rather control the narrative than admit the mistake. And the organization Ibiki just warned me about, the one that already filed an assessment on you as a potential asset, would immediately understand that their assessment was catastrophically wrong, and adjust their approach accordingly. An open promotion doesn't protect you, Naruto. It paints a target on you in front of everyone who might want to pull your strings. So what's the alternative? Naruto asks, and his voice has gone quiet in a way it rarely does. The alternative, Hiruzen says slowly, is that your promotion happens, officially on paper, in a sealed file that exists in exactly one restricted archive, accessible to myself and a small number of people I trust completely. Your rank is real. Your pay grade, your mission eligibility, your standing within this village's actual hierarchy, all of it real, all of it recorded. But publicly, to everyone outside this room, to your classmates, to the council, to Irika, to whatever genin team you're assigned to, you remain exactly what you appear to be. A newly graduated genin, no different from anyone else your age. Naruto sits with that for a long moment. You want me to lie, he says finally. Not accusatory. Just working through it out loud. I want you to be careful, Hiruzen corrects gently. There's a difference. even if it doesn't always feel like one. You're not lying about who you are. You're protecting information that, if it got into the wrong hands, could genuinely put you and everyone around you in danger. That's not the same as deceiving people for your own benefit. It's a burden, and I won't pretend otherwise. But it's the only path I can see that lets you keep the rank you clearly earned without immediately becoming a target for it. For how long? Naruto asks. I don't know, Hiruzen admits. Until I'm confident the threat Ibiki uncovered tonight has been contained. Could be months. Could be considerably longer than that, if what we're dealing with runs as deep as I'm afraid it might. Naruto is quiet for a long moment, looking down at his hands. And here's the thing worth understanding about what's actually happening inside his head right now, because it's not the thing you might expect. He's not thinking about the danger, or not only about the danger. He's thinking about something that matters more to him, right now, than any classified threat assessment. If I'm secretly a Jonin, he says slowly, does that mean I don't get a Genin team? The question catches Hiruzen slightly off guard, not because it's unreasonable, but because of everything they've just discussed. It's not the concern he expected to hear voice first. That's a fair question, he says carefully. Traditionally, no. A Jonin, even one whose rank is classified, would typically be assigned to active duty commensurate with that rank, solo missions, or eventually taking on a Genin team as a sensei, not as a member of one. I don't want that, Naruto says, and there's something raw and immediate in how fast the words come out, like this is the one part of tonight he's actually certain about. I don't want to be pulled away to do secret missions by myself while everyone else my age gets teammates and a sensei and a normal life, even if it's not really normal for me because of, He gestures vaguely at his own stomach, at the seal none of the adults in the room need explain to them. I've spent my whole life being alone. I finally get graduated. I finally get a shot at being on an actual team with actual people my age. And now you're telling me I might not even get that because I turned out to be good at the wrong kind of test? The room goes quiet. Kakashi, in particular, goes very still, his single visible eye fixed on Naruto with an expression that's harder than usual to read, something that might be recognition, might be the beginning of understanding exactly what kind of loneliness this specific 12-year-old has actually lived with, underneath all the noise and bluster everyone assumes is the whole story. Hiruzen studies Naruto for a long moment, and something in his old, tired face softens. That, he says finally, is not a request I expected tonight. But it's not an unreasonable one. He glances at Kakashi. In fact, it may solve a problem rather than create one. How so? Kakashi asks. If Naruto's cover is that of a newly graduated genin assigned to a standard 3-person team, Hiruzen says, thinking it through as he speaks, then his presence in the village, his daily activity, his apparent limitations, all of it becomes camouflage. A Jonin conspicuously absent from public life, disappearing for unexplained stretches of time, would draw exactly the kind of attention we're trying to avoid. A genin attending team training, going on D-rank missions, arguing with his teammates over lunch, that draws no attention at all. It's the most effective cover imaginable, precisely because it isn't a performance built for the purpose. It's a role he actually wants. He looks back at Naruto. You'd have to maintain it convincingly. Deliberately underperform in front of your team when the situation calls for it. Hold back capabilities you've just spent an hour demonstrating to us, all without your teammates, or your sensei, initially, understanding why. That is not a small thing to ask of a 12-year-old. It will be exhausting in ways that have nothing to do with chakra. I don't care, Naruto says immediately. I'll do it. Just, let me have the team. Let me have that part be real, even if the rest of it has to be a secret. Hiruzen glances at Kakashi, a silent question passing between them, and Kakashi, after a moment, gives the smallest possible nod. There is a benefit to that arrangement I hadn't fully considered until just now, Kakashi says slowly. If I'm the one assigned as his genin sensei, which, given the timing of the graduating class and my current availability, is not an unreasonable assumption, I would already be positioned to monitor him without raising suspicion. His sensei knowing the truth isn't a security risk. It's operational necessity. You're saying you'd want to be his handler, Shikaku says, under cover of being his sensei. I'm saying, Kakashi replies, that it solves several problems at once, assuming Hokage-sama is amenable. Hiruzen considers this for a long moment, weighing it the way he weighs every decision that's about to reshape a life, carefully, and with the particular weariness of a man who has made too many decisions like this over too many decades. Very well, he says finally. Kakashi, I'll finalize your assignment to the newly graduated team that includes Naruto. You'll know the full truth of his classified status. His two teammates will not initially, and likely not for some time, until I'm satisfied the immediate threat has passed. Naruto, you'll maintain the cover completely, in front of everyone outside the small circle of people in this room, plus Ibiki. That means no unusual displays of skill in front of your team unless circumstances leave you no other choice. It means continuing to appear, publicly, exactly as you have, energetic, undisciplined, prone to mistakes. Can you do that? Naruto is quiet for a moment, and you can watch something settle in his face, not reluctance, but resolve. The particular kind of steadiness that comes from a kid who has spent years being told he wasn't good enough finally being asked to prove he's disciplined enough to hide how good he actually is. Yeah, he says. I can do that. It won't be easy, Hiruzen warns. There will be moments, in the field under pressure, where the instinct to act on what you actually know how to do will be strong, and restraining it could put you or your teammates at greater risk in the short term than simply doing what needs to be done. I need you to understand that tension exists, and that I'm asking you to navigate it without a clear rulebook for when to break cover. I get it, Naruto says. And then, after a beat, quieter, I don't want Sakura-chan or whoever else is on my team to get hurt because I was too worried about keeping a secret. If it comes down to that, I'm not gonna just stand there and let something happen. Hiruzen looks at him for a long moment, and something that might be relief crosses his face. That, he says, is exactly the right instinct. Hold on to it. If it ever truly comes down to a choice between your teammates' safety and the secret, choose them. I would rather manage the political fallout of an exposed secret than lose a child to the consequences of keeping one. What follows is not dramatic in the way you might expect. No elaborate ceremony, no ancient scroll requiring blood signatures. Nothing that would look impressive if this were the kind of story that cared more about spectacle than substance. It's paperwork, mostly, a formal oath, administered quietly by Hiruzen himself, binding Naruto, and every adult in that room, to a classification protocol that legally does not exist outside a single restricted file in the Hokage's personal archive. A simple privacy seal is applied, not the kind that punishes or controls. Nothing like the seal on Naruto's stomach that shaped so much of his life without his input, but a small, voluntary chakra marker placed on the inside of his left wrist, invisible under normal clothing, that will alert Hiruzen if it's ever forcibly removed or tampered with. A safeguard, Hiruzen explains, not a leash. Something that lets the village know, quietly, if Naruto is ever taken against his will. Naruto signs the document with his own name, an actual signature, the first genuinely official act of his shinobi career, on a piece of paper that legally promotes him to Jonin rank in a filing system 3 people besides himself will ever see. It's almost 2 in the morning by the time it's finished. Hiruzen walks him personally to the side entrance, the same one he came in through hours earlier, and for a moment the two of them stand there in the cool night air, the village quiet and dark around them. Most of Konoha's residents blissfully unaware of anything that just happened underneath their feet. Go home, Naruto, Hiruzen says. Sleep. Tomorrow, or today, I suppose, given the hour, you'll wake up as exactly who you were yesterday, at least as far as anyone else is concerned. Team assignments will be announced in a few days. You'll meet your teammates, your sensei will pretend, for their benefit, that he's meeting you for the first time as well. And you'll go back to being the boy everyone expects to see. Can you do that? Naruto looks up at him, small, exhausted, 12 years old and carrying, as of tonight, a weight most adults in this village will never fully understand. Yeah, he says. I can do that. He turns to go, then pauses, glancing back. Hokage Gigi, he says. Thanks. For testing me instead of just, assuming. Hiruzen's tired, weathered face softens into something close to a real smile. Thank you, he says quietly, for being worth testing. Go home. Naruto walks off into the dark, and Hiruzen stands in the doorway for a long moment after he's gone, watching the empty street, thinking about everything that changed tonight, a boy's entire future rewritten in the space of a single evening, a threat uncovered that's going to require careful, patient handling in the weeks ahead, and a secret now shared among 4 people that, if it ever gets out before he's ready, could unravel faster than anyone in that room wants to imagine. 3 days later, the academy classroom is loud in the specific, chaotic way it always is on team assignment day. 27 kids buzzing with nervous energy, trading guesses about who'll end up with whom, half of them not sleeping the night before out of pure anticipation. Naruto sits at his usual desk, arms folded behind his head, doing his level best to look exactly as bored and restless as he would have a week ago, before a windowless room, before a trial, before a rank he's not allowed to talk about, sitting quietly on file somewhere in the Hokage Tower. It's harder than he expected. Not the acting itself. He's had years of practice pretending to be less than he is, whether he realized that's what he was doing or not. But the specific strangeness of sitting in this familiar room, surrounded by classmates who have no idea anything's changed, while carrying something none of them could possibly guess at. Irika, back on his feet after a few days of recovery, still moving a little stiffly from the injury, stands at the front of the room with the team roster in hand. "All right, settle down," he calls out, and the room quiets by degrees, the way it always does. "I'm going to read off the teams. Remember, these assignments are designed to balance your skills, no complaining." He works through the list. Team by team, names called, groans and cheers rippling through the room in roughly equal measure. Naruto barely listens to most of it, half his attention on the strange, low-grade tension sitting in his chest, because he already knows, technically, who his sensei is going to be, even if he's not supposed to know, and there's something surreal about sitting through the performance of not knowing. Team 7, Irika reads out. Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto's head comes up, right on cue, with exactly the kind of eager, hopeful energy anyone watching would expect. Sakura Haruno, a groan from Naruto, genuine enough, some feelings don't need to be faked, and his crush on Sakura is very real even if everything else about this moment is complicated, followed immediately by a small, private thrill of something closer to relief, because whatever else is true about tonight, at least he gets to be on a team with someone he actually likes. And Sasuke Uchiha. That lands the way it always lands, a ripple of reaction through the room, half the girls' attention snapping towards Sakura with something between envy and sympathy, Sasuke himself not reacting at all, arms crossed, staring straight ahead with the particular closed-off stillness that's defined him since his family died. Naruto glances at him for a second, and something complicated passes behind his eyes, not the simple, uncomplicated rivalry everyone assumes exists between them, but something with more weight to it now, colored by a secret nobody in this room, not even Sasuke, has any way of understanding. "Your Jonin sensei will be Kakashi Hatake," Irika finishes. Naruto already knew that part too. And still, hearing it said out loud, in this ordinary classroom, in front of everyone who has no idea the man's already spent an entire evening watching Naruto run tactical command exercises under live fire pressure, it hits differently than he expected. It makes the whole thing suddenly, uncomfortably real. This isn't a strange, isolated night in a windowless room anymore. This is his actual life now, starting today, and he's going to have to live inside this secret every single day, in front of people he wants, genuinely, badly, to be honest with. Class lets out not long after, the other teams dispersing to wait for their senseis, and Naruto finds himself standing near the classroom door with Sakura fidgeting nearby, trying and failing not to look too obviously in Sasuke's direction, and Sasuke himself leaning against the wall a short distance away, arms crossed, apparently uninterested in either of them. It should feel exciting. In a lot of ways it does. This is the moment he's been waiting years for, an actual team, an actual sensei, the first real chance at the kind of belonging he's wanted his whole life. But underneath the excitement, there's a low, constant hum of something else now too, a wariness that wasn't there a week ago, an awareness that every interaction from here forward is going to require a kind of careful calculation he's never had to apply to friendship before. Don't show them too much. Don't let anything slip. Fail convincingly when it matters. It's a strange thing, to walk into the most hopeful moment of your life already carrying instructions for how much of yourself you're allowed to show. Hours pass. Sasuke and Sakura's patience wears thinner and thinner as every other team's sensei arrives on schedule and theirs doesn't, a detail Naruto already half expects, because if there's one thing 3 days of secret briefings taught him about Kakashi Hatake, it's that punctuality is apparently not among his professional strengths, cover story or otherwise. When Kakashi finally does arrive, hours late, single visible eye curved into an expression of mild, unbothered apology. Some vague excuse about a black cat and a long detour already halfway out of his mouth. Naruto watches Sasuke's barely restrained irritation and Sakura's exasperated outburst with an odd, quiet feeling settling in his chest. Because he knows something they don't. He knows that underneath the lazy, tardy exterior is a man who watched him run 5 separate command simulations without blinking, who told him, with total sincerity, that his instincts under pressure rivaled shinobi with years more experience. And he's going to have to sit here, tomorrow, at whatever test Kakashi's obviously about to spring on them, and pretend he doesn't know any of that at all. Alright, Kakashi says, looking over the 3 of them with the same unreadable, half-lidded gaze he'll become famous for among genin teams for years to come. Let's get acquainted. Meet me on the roof. Naruto follows Sakura and Sasuke up the stairwell, and as he climbs, some small, tired part of him is already running the calculations Hiruzen warned him about 3 nights ago, measuring, in advance, exactly how much of himself he's going to have to hide tomorrow, and the day after that, and for however many months it takes before this secret is finally safe enough to set down. Chapter 4, Losing on Purpose. Quick question before we jump back in. Have you ever had to fail at something on purpose, in front of people whose opinion of you actually matters? Because succeeding would have been more dangerous than losing? Because that's the exact tightrope Naruto Uzumaki wakes up on the morning after team assignments. 12 years old, freshly and secretly promoted to a rank he's not allowed to mention to a single living soul outside 4 people. About to walk into a training ground where his brand new sensei already knows exactly what he's capable of, and his 2 brand new teammates absolutely do not. If you're new here, this is Chapter 4 of our What If series asking what happens when Naruto secretly passes the Jonin Exam before graduation. So if you haven't caught the first 3 chapters, go check those out after this one. For everyone else, you already know what test is waiting for Team 7 this morning. The question today isn't whether Naruto can pass Kakashi's bell test. It's whether he can fail it convincingly enough to keep a secret alive. Let's get into it. Naruto doesn't sleep much that night. Which, honestly, isn't unusual for him. Most nights before something big, his mind runs too fast to let his body catch up. But tonight it's not excitement keeping him up. It's math. He lies on his back in his small apartment, staring at the ceiling, running through everything Hiruzen told him 3 nights ago, and trying to translate it into something he can actually execute tomorrow. Maintain the cover completely. No unusual displays of skill unless circumstances leave you no other choice. That sounds simple enough when an old man says it in a quiet, serious voice in a windowless room. It sounds considerably less simple when Naruto actually starts picturing tomorrow morning, Sasuke's sharp, evaluating stare, Sakura's quick temper, and Kakashi, who already knows exactly what Naruto's tactical mind is capable of, watching every single move he makes for the smallest inconsistency. He's spent years hiding his intelligence by accident, mostly, by just being who he actually is, loud and impulsive and hungry for attention, while the deeper, more calculating part of himself stayed quiet in the background where nobody thought to look for it. Now he has to hide it on purpose. Deliberately, in real time, under pressure, in front of exactly the kind of person, a sensei, trained to read genin, whose entire job is noticing things that don't add up. How do you unlearn being smart without actually getting dumber? It's not a question the Academy ever prepared him for. It's not a question anyone's ever had to answer, probably, not like this. And by the time the sky starts turning gray outside his window, Naruto has landed on the only strategy he can think of that might actually work. Don't try to fake stupidity. That's a losing game. Real intelligence is hard to fully suppress, and any experienced shinobi worth their headband will eventually notice the seams in a performance like that. Instead, lean into the parts of himself that are already, genuinely, completely real. The impatience. The stubbornness. The tendency to charge in on instinct before thinking a situation all the way through, especially when he's frustrated or embarrassed. Those aren't a mask. Those are just Naruto, and if he can let those genuine impulses drive most of his visible decisions today, while keeping the deeper tactical layer running quietly underneath, invisible, steering things just enough to keep everyone safe without ever fully showing its hand. Maybe that's how you hide a mountain. You don't pretend it's not there. You just make sure everyone's too busy looking at the noisy little hill in front of it. He gets up before sunrise, eats a quick breakfast standing at his counter, and heads for the training ground with the second slip of paper Hiruzen gave him. This one legitimate, official, the kind every genin team gets, folded in his pocket alongside a very different kind of instruction he's carrying only in his head. Fail like yourself? Just don't fail by accident. Training ground 3 at 7 in the morning is quiet, 2 still clinging to the grass, 3 wooden posts standing in a loose triangle near the center of a clearing ringed by trees. Sakura arrives first, sitting neatly on one of the low stumps with her hands folded in her lap, dressed in her usual practical red and pale pink, sleeves long enough to cover her arms completely, hair pulled back out of her face, nervous energy radiating off her in a way that has nothing to do with the exercise ahead and everything to do with the fact that Sasuke Uchiha is about to be standing a few feet away from her for the foreseeable future. Sasuke shows up a few minutes later, saying nothing, taking up a position against the tree with his arms crossed, radiating the specific brand of controlled isolation that's defined him for years. Naruto arrives last, jogging in with exaggerated energy, already loud before he's fully within earshot. Morning! Where's Kakashi-sensei? Don't tell me he's already late, Sakura cuts in, sighing. Obviously. And here's where you get your first real taste of what today is actually going to require from Naruto, because as the three of them wait, and wait, and wait, the morning stretching past the agreed meeting time by a solid 2 hours, Naruto has to fight a genuine, uncomfortable urge to do something useful with the downtime. Every instinct honed by 2 years of secret, disciplined training wants him to use this time productively, stretch, review chakra control exercises. At minimum, sit quietly and think through likely test scenarios the way he would have 3 nights ago in that windowless room. Instead, he does what the old Naruto would do. He complains loudly about being hungry. He tries, badly, to balance a kunai on his finger to pass the time, drops it twice, and laughs it off both times instead of quietly noting, which he does, internally, without meaning to, that the second drop was actually due to a slight breeze shift he should have compensated for. He gets into a minor, pointless argument with Sasuke about absolutely nothing, mostly because it's easier to be genuinely annoying than to sit still and risk someone noticing how unnaturally patient he actually is underneath the performance. It's exhausting in a way physical training never has been. Being loud on purpose, when your instincts are pulling you toward quiet and calculated, takes its own particular kind of effort. Kakashi finally arrives a little after 9. Ambling into the clearing with a paperback book already open in one hand, offering the same lazy, half-hearted excuse he'll apparently keep recycling for years. Something about a black cat, a very long detour, unavoidable circumstances. That lands about as well as you'd expect with an already irritated Sakura. You're late, she snaps right on cue. Yeah, sorry about that, Kakashi says, entirely unbothered, tucking the book away and looking over the 3 of them with that familiar half-lidded gaze. But when his visible eye passes over Naruto, just for a fraction of a second longer than it lingers on Sakura or Sasuke, there's something in it that isn't quite part of the lazy performance. A flicker of genuine, private curiosity. Let's see how you handle this. Naruto meets his gaze for exactly 1 beat too long before catching himself and looking away, scratching the back of his head with exaggerated impatience. Careful, he tells himself. Don't stare back like you know something. All right, Kakashi says, gesturing toward the 3 wooden posts. Let's get started. Real quick, before we do anything official, I want you all to introduce yourselves. Likes, dislikes, dreams for the future, that sort of thing. It's a small, almost throwaway moment in most versions of this story, but it matters here more than you might expect, because it's the first real test of Naruto's new discipline. Sakura goes first, mostly quiet, mostly focused on Sasuke in a way that makes even Sasuke's carefully blank expression flicker with mild discomfort. Sasuke's introduction is short, cold, and ends on a promise to restore his clan and kill a specific man, a declaration that lands heavier in the clearing than either of the other two probably expect, though Naruto, unlike a version of himself from a week ago, actually catches something underneath it now. Not just anger. Grief, compressed down into something that sounds like ambition because ambition is easier to say out loud. Then it's Naruto's turn, and this is where he has to make his first real choice about how much of himself to let show. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki," he announces, loud, grinning, exactly the performance everyone expects. "I like ramen, especially Ichiraku's, best ramen in the whole village, and I like Irika-sensei, 'cause he actually believed in me. I don't like the 3 minutes you gotta wait for the water to boil before you can eat the ramen. And my dream," he pauses here, and for just a second, something genuine slips through the performance, unfiltered, is to become Hokage. So strong that everyone in this village has to look at me and actually see me, instead of looking through me. Kakashi's visible eye doesn't change expression exactly, but something in it sharpens slightly, because that last part, actually see me instead of looking through me, isn't the kind of thing a 12-year-old says as a bit. That's real, unguarded, and it's the exact same quality of honest self-awareness Kakashi watched Naruto demonstrate 3 nights ago under a completely different kind of pressure. The performance is good. It's very good, actually, for someone who's had less than a week to practice it. But it's not airtight, and Kakashi files that detail away quietly, unsurprised, already anticipating that a boy who ran 5 command simulations without flinching probably isn't capable of hiding every single genuine part of himself, no matter how hard he tries. "Alright," Kakashi says, moving them along before Sakura can comment on the sudden shift in tone. "Now for the real part of today." He explains the test. 2 bells, tied to his belt, and only 2, despite there being 3 of them, which means one person is guaranteed to fail and get sent back to the academy no matter what happens. He explains the time limit, noon, and the rule that they need to come at him with the intent to actually kill, or they'll never even get close. He explains that they can eat breakfast now if they skipped it, because they're going to need the energy, a detail that immediately makes Sakura and Sasuke's stomachs sink slightly, because it's their first real hint that this test is designed to be considerably harder than it initially sounds. Naruto's stomach doesn't sink at all. Naruto already knows, from 3 nights ago, that this entire Jonin exam structure is built to test for something the written portion of the academy never checks: cooperation, sacrifice, the willingness to work as a unit instead of 3 individuals competing for the same prize. Kakashi more or less told him as much, indirectly, during one of their late-night command simulations, in a comment about how most Jonin teams fail this specific test for the exact same reason. Which means Naruto already knows the correct answer to today's test before it even starts. Which means his actual challenge today isn't figuring out the solution. It's getting Sasuke and Sakura to figure it out too, without ever letting either of them realize he already knew it going in. "Ready?" Kakashi asks, setting a small clock down on one of the stumps. Time starts. Now, all 3 Jonin scatter into the tree line, and this is where the real performance begins. Naruto's actual instinct, the trained one, the one that spent an hour running command simulations under Shikakunara and Kakashi's direct supervision, is immediately, automatically running threat assessment on Kakashi the way it would on any unknown combat variable. Reaction speed? Likely jutsu pull for a Jonin of his reputation. The book he was reading, which Naruto clocked without meaning to as being held in a grip too loose and too casual for someone actually absorbed in it, which suggests it's at least partly a prop. A deliberate signal of unconcern meant to bait overconfident Jonin into rushing him. "Don't rush him," the trained part of Naruto's brain says immediately. That's exactly what he wants. But the old Naruto, the real Naruto, the one who's been underestimated his whole life and has exactly one instinctive response to being underestimated, which is to prove people wrong as loudly and directly as possible, is already gritting his teeth at the idea of hiding in the bushes like Sasuke is clearly about to do. Like Sakura probably will too. So Naruto does something that threads an impossibly narrow needle. He charges indirectly, loud, obvious. Exactly the reckless move everyone in the clearing expects from him. But he does it in a way his tactical mind has already quietly calculated gives him almost zero actual chance of getting hurt. Because he's watched Kakashi's reaction speed closely enough over the last few days to know, with reasonable confidence, that a straightforward frontal attack from a Jonin poses functionally no threat to a Jonin of his caliber. It's not a real gambit. It's theater dressed up as recklessness, genuinely, physically committed theater, because half measures would look wrong, but theater all the same, built on information a normal genin wouldn't have. Fight me for real, Kakashi-sensei! He shouts, barreling out of the tree line with a kunai raised. Kakashi, without even looking up from his book, catches Naruto's wrist, spins him around, and has him pinned face first in the dirt within about a second and a half. Exactly the outcome Naruto expected. Exactly the outcome that reads, to anyone watching, as a loud, impulsive genin getting exactly what he deserved for rushing in without a plan. Hand-to-hand isn't your strong suit, huh? Kakashi says mildly, releasing him. Shut up, Naruto mutters, scrambling back, and it's genuinely convincing, because underneath the performance, there's a real, uncomfortable sting to being handled that easily, even when it was mostly by design. Some part of him, no matter how much tactical planning went into that opening move, doesn't love eating dirt in front of his new teammates. From the tree line, hidden in the bushes exactly where Naruto expected, Sakura watches the whole exchange with a small, sympathetic wince, and Sasuke, a short distance away, equally well hidden, files it away as confirmation of exactly what he already assumed about Naruto's competence level. Which, again, is exactly the point. The next hour unfolds roughly the way you'd expect if you've ever watched this test play out before, Sasuke attempting a more calculated approach with fire jutsu, and a genuinely decent ambush from an elevated position, only to get caught in a surprisingly well-executed genjutsu that Kakashi doesn't even seem to be trying very hard to sell. Sakura, alone and increasingly frantic, stumbling into a different genjutsu that convinces her, horrifyingly, that Sasuke's been killed, sending her into a shocked, immobilized panic that effectively removes her from the test entirely for a long stretch. Naruto, watching all of this unfold from a careful distance, using a single shadow clone stationed in the trees, which he tells himself is a reasonable, ordinary enough genin move, even though the way he's using it, cross-referencing multiple vantage points simultaneously, is not remotely ordinary, starts putting together the actual shape of what's happening. He's isolating us on purpose, Naruto realizes, watching Sasuke get genjutsu'd, watching Sakura freeze up somewhere off to his left, testing whether we regroup or just keep trying to win it solo. It's the exact same lesson from the very first scenario in his windowless room trial 3 nights ago. The 60-second goal isn't winning. It's not letting your team fall apart while you try. Except now the trap isn't written on a piece of paper. It's happening in real time, to two people he's technically only known for about 18 hours. Here's the problem, though. Naruto knows the answer. He worked out, almost immediately, that the two bells and the setup practically scream cooperation over competition. That the entire test is designed to punish exactly the kind of individual glory-seeking Sasuke's clearly leaning toward and reward whoever's willing to pool resources instead of hoarding them. But if Naruto marches over to Sasuke and Sakura right now and calmly, methodically lays out the correct tactical solution, the way he would have, without hesitation, in that windowless room 3 nights ago, it's going to look exactly like what it is. A level of strategic clarity that doesn't remotely match the boy who face-planted into the dirt an hour ago trying to headbutt a Jonin. So instead, Naruto has to get to the same conclusion, out loud, in a way that sounds like it's coming from this version of himself, impulsive, a little dense, arriving at the right answer more by stubborn instinct than careful analysis. He finds Sakura first, still shaken from the genjutsu, and rather than calmly explaining the actual mechanics of what happened to her, which he could, easily, having recognized the technique category the second he saw her freeze, he goes loud instead. Hey, Sakura-chan, snap out of it, Sasuke's fine, I just saw him like 2 minutes ago. He says it fast, a little frantic, exactly the tone of someone genuinely worried rather than someone who's already calculated that the illusion was almost certainly a genjutsu given the timing and Kakashi's known specialty. Whatever you saw wasn't real, okay? Sensei's messing with us. It works. Sakura blinks, shakes herself, and the relief that floods her face is real, genuine. And underneath it, something Naruto didn't fully anticipate but is quietly glad to see, a flicker of real gratitude toward him, the first crack in the reflexive dismissal she's carried toward him since the academy. How do you know that? She asks, still a little shaky. I don't know it, Naruto lies easily, I just Come on, Kakashi-sensei's not gonna actually let Sasuke die on day one. That'd be way too much paperwork. He grins, and it lands the way it's supposed to. Deflecting, disarming, not remotely suspicious. They find Sasuke a few minutes later, freed from his own genjutsu, expression tight with the specific frustration of someone who's used to being the strongest person in any given room and has just discovered, uncomfortably, that he isn't here. And this is the moment. The actual hinge of the entire test. The moment Naruto's been quietly steering toward without ever letting either of his teammates see the steering, where he has to get Sasuke to agree to work together, despite every instinct Sasuke has telling him that relying on other people is a weakness he's spent years trying to burn out of himself. Naruto doesn't try logic. He tried that mentally, actually, ran through about 4 different reasoned arguments in the 2 seconds it takes to walk over to Sasuke, and discarded every one of them, because reasoned arguments are exactly the kind of thing that would sound wrong coming out of his mouth right now. Instead, he does something that's simultaneously the most honest and the most calculated thing he does all morning. We're gonna lose, he says bluntly, flopping down onto a fallen log a few feet from Sasuke, sounding genuinely annoyed about it rather than tactically concerned. Like actually lose, both of us, 'cause there's only 2 bells and you keep trying to win by yourself and I keep getting my face shoved in the dirt, and neither of those things is working. So what's your brilliant plan? Sasuke says, flat, clearly expecting nothing useful. I don't have a plan, Naruto says, which is, in the most literal, technical sense, a complete lie, because he absolutely has a plan. Has had one for the better part of 40 minutes. I just know that Kakashi-sensei's stronger than both of us put together, easy, so trying to beat him one-on-one is stupid. If we're both coming at him at once, from 2 directions, that's at least something he has to actually think about instead of picking us off one at a time like he's been doing all morning. It's a genuinely decent tactical suggestion, dressed up in exactly the blunt, frustrated, unpolished language a stubborn 12-year-old would actually use. No mention of angle of approach or divided attention thresholds or any of the more precise vocabulary Naruto used without thinking 3 nights ago in that windowless room. Just 2 is better than 1, let's stop losing separately. Sasuke studies him for a long moment, something calculating behind his dark eyes, and for a second Naruto genuinely doesn't know which way this is going to break. Sasuke Uchiha is not, by nature, a boy inclined to accept help, and Naruto is very much aware that the entire test hinges on whether this specific, prideful kid is willing to swallow that instinct even a little. Fine, Sasuke says finally, standing up, brushing dirt off his shorts. But I'm not doing anything stupid because you told me to. Wouldn't dream of it, Naruto says, grinning, and something in his chest loosens with genuine, uncomplicated relief, not because the test is going according to plan, though it is, but because for a second there, talking to Sasuke like this, it didn't feel like a performance at all. It felt like exactly what it looked like, 2 kids figuring out, together, how to stop losing. Sakura, when they explained the plan to her, a simplified, deliberately vague version, just enough for her to understand her role without either boy fully spelling out the tactical reasoning behind it, agrees almost immediately, relief plain on her face at not having to face Kakashi's genjutsu alone again. What follows over the next 20 minutes is, by any honest measure, a genuinely impressive display of coordinated genin teamwork for a group that formed less than a day ago, Sasuke drawing Kakashi's attention, with a series of increasingly aggressive fire jutsu attacks from multiple angles, Sakura providing cover and distraction from range, and Naruto, in the middle of it, doing something that requires every ounce of the discipline he spent the entire night before rehearsing in his head. Because the honest truth is, Naruto could end this test in about 30 seconds if he wanted to. He's already worked out, with a fair amount of confidence, that a coordinated shadow clone assault, a dozen clones converging from every angle simultaneously, the exact tactic that let him overwhelm a full-grown Chunin trader a week ago, would almost certainly force Kakashi to either commit real effort to defending himself, or concede a bell just to end the engagement cleanly. He doesn't do that. He makes exactly 3 clones, a number that reads as ambitious but plausible for a genin his age, rather than suspiciously, effortlessly overwhelming, and uses them clumsily, more as a distraction wrapped around Sasuke's fire jutsu than as a coordinated tactical strike in their own right. He lets 1 clone get dispelled almost immediately, in a way that looks like a mistake rather than a deliberate sacrifice. even though it's actually buying the other two exactly enough time to reposition the way he wants. It's an uncomfortable kind of restraint, the tactical equivalent of running with a weight strapped to your ankle, deliberately handicapping yourself while still trying to contribute meaningfully to a fight your teammates are taking completely seriously. And it almost works perfectly. Almost. Because right around the 11-minute mark of the coordinated assault, Sasuke gets clipped by a counter that sends him skidding hard across the clearing. And for just a fraction of a second, less than a full second really, barely long enough to register, Naruto's trained instincts override his careful performance entirely. He doesn't think about it. He doesn't calculate an appropriately Jonin-level response. His body just moves, the same way it moved in the forest a week ago when Iruka was in danger. The same way it moved during 5 separate live-fire command simulations 3 nights ago, closing the distance to Sasuke in a burst of speed that's simply, undeniably faster than anything a fresh academy graduate should be capable of, catching him under one arm and hauling him clear of a follow-up strike with a precision that has nothing to do with luck and everything to do with reflexes built over 2 years of secret, disciplined training. It lasts maybe 2 seconds total. Sasuke, dazed from the hit, probably doesn't even fully register it happened, but Kakashi does. His visible eye tracks the movement with total clarity, the speed, the angle, the precise economy of motion that doesn't waste a single unnecessary gesture, and for just a moment, something flickers across his usually unreadable expression. Not surprise, exactly. He already knew Naruto was capable of this, but something closer to quiet concern, the recognition of a crack forming in a performance that's held together remarkably well until right now. Naruto realizes his mistake almost instantly, feels the wrongness of it settle into his stomach the second Sasuke's weight is steady again, and immediately, deliberately, overcorrects, stumbling slightly as he sets Sasuke down, letting his balance look shakier than it actually is, adding a beat of visible effort to his breathing that isn't entirely necessary. "You okay?" he asks Sasuke, voice pitched with genuine concern that, thankfully, covers for the momentary slip. "Fine," Sasuke mutters, shoving himself back upright, too dazed and too focused on the fight to have caught the specifics of what just happened. But Kakashi caught it. And as the test continues, Sakura managing, through a combination of Naruto's cloned distraction and Sasuke's continued pressure, to actually snag one of the 2 bells in a moment of genuine, hard-earned teamwork right as the noon bell rings somewhere in the distance. Kakashi's attention keeps drifting back to Naruto with a new, sharper kind of scrutiny. When the clock runs out, Kakashi gathers all 3 of them near the posts. And this is the part of the story you already know if you've seen this test play out before. The reveal that only Sakura managed to actually secure a bell, that by the letter of the rules, that means Sasuke and Naruto should be sent back to the academy, tied to the posts, forced to watch the other 2 eat lunch in front of them as a final cruel twist of the exercise. Except Sakura, without needing much prompting at all this time, immediately tries to share her lunch with both of them anyway, openly defying Kakashi's explicit instruction not to feed the tied-up members of the team, a small act of quiet rebellion that, in the original version of this story, is exactly the moment that convinces Kakashi the team has genuinely internalized the lesson. Naruto watches this unfold with something that isn't performance at all. It's real gratitude, real warmth, watching 2 people who barely know him choose to share what little they have rather than follow a rule that would leave him hungry and humiliated. Whatever else is complicated about today, the secret, the careful management of every single word and movement, this part is completely, uncomplicatedly genuine, and he lets it show on his face without editing it at all, because there's no version of hiding that particular feeling that would look right anyway. "Enough," Kakashi says right on cue, stepping forward with an expression that shifts, deliberately, from stern disappointment into something warmer. "You pass." The explanation that follows, the speech about how those who abandon a comrade are worse than those who abandon the mission, about how the whole point of the test was never the bells at all, lands exactly the way it's supposed to on Sakura and Sasuke, both of them absorbing the lesson with the particular clarity of kids who just lived through the failure of trying to solve it alone. Naruto listens too, nodding along at the right moments, reacting with exactly the right mixture of relief and pride that any freshly passed genin would show. But underneath it, he's doing something else entirely, running back through the last 4 hours in his head, cataloging every single moment where his performance might have cracked, replaying that split-second rescue of Sasuke over and over, trying to gauge exactly how much Kakashi actually saw. Team 7 disperses not long after, Sasuke walking off alone the way he always will, Sakura lingering a moment longer to offer Naruto a genuinely warm smile before heading home herself, a small, real shift in how she sees him that Naruto tucks away and treasures more than he'd ever admit out loud. And then it's just Naruto and Kakashi, alone in the clearing, the afternoon sun slanting long shadows across the grass. "Walk with me," Kakashi says. It's not a request. They walk in silence for a while, away from the training ground, along a quiet path that winds through a stretch of forest few people bother using this late in the day. Naruto's stomach is tight with a specific, familiar kind of dread, not fear, exactly, but the particular discomfort of someone who's pretty sure they're about to be caught at something and isn't sure yet how bad the consequences are going to be. "You did well today," Kakashi says finally, breaking the silence. "Genuinely. The version of yourself you showed today would have passed this test on its own merits, no secret required." "Thanks," Naruto says carefully, waiting for the actual point. "That move with Sasuke," Kakashi continues, not looking at him, gaze fixed somewhere ahead on the path. "The pull and reposition, when he took that hit. That wasn't academy graduate reflexes. That wasn't even solid genin reflexes. I've seen Chunin with slower reaction times." Naruto's stomach drops fully now. It happened fast. I wasn't really thinking, I know," Kakashi says, and there's no accusation in his voice, which somehow makes it worse. "That's exactly the problem. You weren't thinking. Which means, under real pressure, your actual instincts are going to override whatever careful performance you've built, every single time, because that's what instincts do. They're faster than conscious decision-making. That's the whole point of them." He finally glances over, and his single visible eye is serious in a way that cuts through any lingering warmth from moments ago. "I'm not telling you this to scold you," he says. "You did remarkably well for someone with 3 days' notice and 0 training in deception. But I need you to understand something important, and I need you to actually hear it, not just nod along the way you did back there when I was praising the team." "Okay," Naruto says quietly. "You cannot maintain this cover through sheer effort of will alone," Kakashi says. "Not consistently, not over months, maybe longer. There will be moments, in situations far more dangerous than a bell test, where your instincts take over exactly the way they did today, and depending on who's watching when that happens, the consequences could be considerably worse than an observant sensei filing away a private concern." Naruto is quiet for a long moment, processing that, the full weight of it settling somewhere heavier than it did back in the windowless room 3 nights ago, when all of this was still theoretical. "So what do I do?" he asks finally. Kakashi is quiet for a moment, considering. "For now," he says, "you keep doing exactly what you did today. It worked, mostly. The slip was small, and I doubt Sasuke or Sakura caught it at all. They were too focused on the fight itself. But going forward, I want you training with me privately, outside of team exercises. Not to make you stronger, you're already stronger than you're supposed to be, to help you build better control over when that strength shows itself. Think of it as chakra control, except the thing you're controlling isn't chakra." "That actually makes sense," Naruto admits. "It's going to be harder than anything you've done so far," Kakashi warns. "Hiding weakness is easy, everyone does that, it's basic self-preservation. Hiding strength convincingly, consistently, under genuine pressure, without an audience noticing the seams? That's one of the hardest disciplines in this profession. Some Jonin spend their entire undercover careers never fully mastering it." Naruto nods slowly, and something in his expression settles into the same quiet resolve Kakashi first noticed 3 nights ago in that windowless room. Not excitement, not fear, just steady, deliberate acceptance of a difficult job that needs doing. "Okay," he says. "Teach me." They walk on together for a while longer, the late afternoon light filtering gold through the trees, and for a moment it's almost possible to forget the weight of everything sitting underneath this ordinary scene. A sensei and his newly passed student, walking home after a good day's work, except one of them already knows exactly how much harder tomorrow is about to get, and the other one is only just starting to understand it. Because 3 days from now, Team 7 gets its first real mission assignment, and while the official paperwork will call it a simple C-rank escort job, low risk, low complexity, Exactly the kind of assignment a newly formed genin team is supposed to cut their teeth on. Naruto is about to learn, the hard way, that some of the most dangerous secrets in this world have a way of finding him whether he's ready for them or not. A mist is waiting on the road to Wave, and it isn't the kind that shows up on any weather report. Chapter 5, Zabuza's Mist. Real quick before we get into it, if you've ever had a job where you had to look less competent than you actually are just to keep your coworkers comfortable, you already have a small taste of what the next few days are about to put Naruto Uzumaki through. Except instead of an awkward performance review if he slips up, the stakes here are a rogue mist swordsman with a blade the size of a small boat, and absolutely no interest in whether a 12-year-old's cover story survives the encounter. This is Chapter 5 of our series asking what happens when Naruto secretly passes the Jonin Exam before graduation, and today, that secret is about to collide head-on with the first real threat Team 7 has ever faced. If this is your first time here, go back and catch Chapters 1 through 4 so all of this lands the way it's supposed to. For everyone else, let's get into it. Because the mist on the road to Wave isn't natural, and neither is the man standing inside it. The mission briefing, 3 days after the bell test, goes almost exactly the way you'd expect. Tazuna the bridge builder, an older man with a weathered face and a bottle of something he insists is just for the nerves tucked into his bag, which Kakashi, without missing a beat, quietly informs him isn't allowed anywhere near the genin under his supervision, prompting a grumble and the bottle's swift, permanent disappearance into Tazuna's luggage, stands in the Hokage's office looking considerably more nervous than a simple C-rank escort job should require. Naruto doesn't catch the nervousness. Not because he's incapable of catching it. 3 nights ago, in a windowless room, he demonstrated an ability to read a tense room faster than most trained shinobi twice his age, but because he's actively, deliberately not looking for it. This is the new discipline Kakashi's been drilling into him during their private training sessions over the last 3 days. Pick your battles for when the real instincts get to run. Right now, in a Hokage briefing everyone assumes is routine. Showing up unusually perceptive isn't worth the risk. So Naruto does what Naruto would actually do in this situation if none of the last week had happened. He complains about the boring assignment. He brags, loudly, about how a bridge-building escort job is basically beneath someone destined to be Hokage. He gets into a brief, entirely genuine argument with Tazuna after the older man calls him a short, loud brat, which, fair, honestly, and Naruto's offended reaction is not remotely performed. Underneath all of that, though, a small, quiet part of him has already clocked the tremor in Tazuna's hands and filed it away without meaning to. Something's off with this guy. He doesn't say anything. He just lets it sit, the way Kakashi's been teaching him to let things sit, noticed, tracked, but not acted on until it actually matters. It's going to matter faster than any of them expect. The road to Wave is long, winding through increasingly rural country as the days pass, farmland giving way to thinner forest and then to the kind of damp, low-lying coastal terrain that tells you the ocean's getting close. Naruto spends most of the walk doing exactly what a normal genin would do, asking too many questions, getting distracted by wildlife, needling Sasuke about absolutely nothing in particular just to fill the silence, while quietly, underneath all of it, running the same kind of environmental threat assessment. He can't quite fully switch off anymore, not since that trial rewired something in how he processes the world around him. He notices the puddle before Sasuke does. That's the detail worth sitting with for a second, because in most versions of this story, it's Kakashi who spots it first, and Sasuke who catches on a half-beat later, the two of them exchanging a silent, knowing look while Naruto and Sakura remain oblivious. This time, Naruto's eyes land on it almost immediately, a shallow puddle sitting on a dry road, on a day with no rain in recent memory, positioned close enough to the path that anyone walking past would come within striking range of whatever's using it as cover. It's such an obvious tell, once you know what you're looking for, that Naruto has to actively fight the urge to react to it. His trained instinct wants to immediately reposition the group, signal Kakashi with a subtle gesture, start calculating engagement angles the way he did during those 5 simulations in the windowless room. Instead, he does something that requires almost as much discipline as staying quiet would have. He lets himself get distracted by something else entirely, loudly pointing out a bird in a nearby tree. drawing everyone's attention just enough that his lingering glance at the puddle doesn't register as unusual to Sasuke, who's watching him with the same low-grade suspicion he's carried since the bell test, still turning over that split-second rescue in the back of his mind even if he can't quite articulate why it bothers him. Kakashi, of course, clocks the puddle too. That part of the story doesn't change, and Naruto watches his sensei's single visible eye flick toward it for just a fraction of a second before returning to its usual half-lidded, unbothered expression. A silent acknowledgement passes between them, so brief that nobody else in the group could possibly have caught it. I see it. Let it happen. Watch how you handle it. The demon brothers spring their ambush moments later, a bladed chain whipping out of the puddle, wrapping around Kakashi in a heartbeat, and for one horrifying second, both Sasuke and Sakura watch their sensei get torn apart in a spray of blood and water, a substitution. Kakashi's fine, tucked safely into the tree line, already moving to intercept. But Naruto has to fight down a genuine flash of real alarm before his trained mind catches up and reminds him, correctly, that a Jonin of Kakashi's caliber wouldn't be caught that easily by two Chunin-level attackers. He knew that, rationally, half a second before his body reacted anyway, which tells you something important about how thin the line actually is, even now, between Naruto's careful performance and his genuine emotional responses. Some fears don't check credentials before firing. What happens next is the first real-live combat test of everything Naruto's been rehearsing. The two attackers, Meizu and Gozu, brothers wielding a shared, chained gauntlet designed to shred through anyone unlucky enough to get caught in it, split their focus, one lunging directly for Tazuna while the other engages the genin directly. And this is where Naruto has to make his first genuinely difficult real-time decision of the mission. Does he let his teammates handle this the way genin their age actually would, potentially leaving Tazuna exposed for a dangerous few seconds? Or does he intervene in a way that might expose exactly how capable he really is? Sasuke solves part of the problem himself, moving with a speed and precision that catches the attacking brother off guard, pinning the chain to a tree with a well-placed kunai throw and following up with a solid kick that sends the man sprawling. It's genuinely impressive genin-level work, good enough that Naruto doesn't need to intervene at all on that front, which is a relief, because it means one less calculation he has to make about how much of himself to show. The bigger problem is the brother going for Tazuna directly, chain whipping out faster than Sakura, currently positioned as Tazuna's nearest protection, can realistically counter. Naruto's trained mind runs the math instantly. Full intervention, the kind he'd use without hesitation in an actual mission with no cover to maintain, would mean intercepting the chain directly, probably with a controlled shadow clone burst time to disrupt the trajectory before it reaches its target. Clean. Efficient. Also, unmistakably, the kind of precise defensive maneuver that would make Sasuke's earlier suspicions crystallize into certainty. So instead, Naruto does something Messier. Deliberately Messier, throwing himself bodily into the chain's path in a move that looks reckless and slightly desperate rather than calculated, taking a glancing hit across the shoulder that he could have avoided entirely with better positioning, but which reads, to everyone watching, as exactly the kind of overeager, underskilled heroics you'd expect from the loudest member of the team. It works. It also actually hurts, a sharp line of pain blooming across his shoulder where the chain caught him. And there's something almost useful about that discomfort. It keeps his reaction, the wince, the muttered curse, completely genuine, no performance required. Kakashi finishes the fight a few seconds later, subduing both brothers with brisk, efficient economy of motion that leaves no ambiguity about the actual gap in skill between a Jonin and a couple of low-tier missing nin. As the dust settles, Kakashi's attention lands on Naruto's shoulder, then flicks to his face with a question in it that has nothing to do with the injury itself. You alright? He asks, out loud, for the benefit of Sakura and a shaken, guilt-ridden Tazuna. Fine. Naruto says too loud, clutching his shoulder with exaggerated drama that's about 40% real pain and 60% performance. Takes more than a chain to keep me down, believe it. Kakashi's visible eye lingers on him a beat longer than strictly necessary, and Naruto understands, without a single word needing to pass between them, exactly what that look means. That intervention was clumsy on purpose. I noticed. We'll talk later. What follows is a part of this story you probably already know if you've seen this arc before. Tazuna, cornered by Kakashi's pointed questions, finally admits the truth. This mission was never a simple C-rank job. Wave Country is under the crushing economic grip of a shipping tycoon named Gato, whose operation has drained the region dry, and the bridge Tazuna's building is the only real hope the country has of breaking free of that grip. Which means the Demon Brothers weren't random bandits. They were hired muscle, sent specifically to make sure that bridge never gets finished. The genuine version of Kakashi has a private conversation with Tazuna and the genin about the risks of continuing. This job is now, functionally, a B-rank mission at minimum, possibly higher, and by rights, Team 7 could turn back without any real fault attached to the decision. They don't turn back, obviously. Sakura's the one who actually articulates why, in a small but genuinely brave moment, that leaving now means Tazuna and his family and his whole country face those consequences alone. And that's not something any of them can walk away from with a clean conscience. Naruto watches that moment with something warm settling in his chest, because it's real growth, real conviction, coming from someone he genuinely wants to see thrive on this team, and none of his own careful calculations touch it at all. The mission continues. That night, camped a short distance outside Tazuna's small coastal village, Kakashi finds a quiet moment to pull Naruto aside while Sasuke and Sakura are occupied setting up the modest camp, a simple meal of grilled fish and rice cooking over a low fire. No bottles in sight now that Tazuna's supply has been quietly relocated. That was clumsy, Kakashi says without preamble, once they're a comfortable distance from the others. The intercept. You could have stopped that chain 3 separate ways that wouldn't have left a mark on you. I know, Naruto admits, rubbing at the still tender line across his shoulder. I figured getting hit looked more like something I'd actually do than dodging it clean. It did, Kakashi agrees. But you're going to have to be careful about how often you're willing to eat real damage just to maintain appearances. Wave isn't the last threat on this trip, and pain adds up. You can't afford to be genuinely weakened by the time something bigger shows up, just because you spent your first fight taking hits you didn't need to take. Naruto's quiet for a moment, absorbing that. It's a fair point, and an uncomfortable one, the kind of trade-off nobody warned him about back in that windowless room, where the conversation was mostly theoretical, mostly about paperwork and secrecy protocols rather than the actual physical cost of maintaining a lie in real combat. So what am I supposed to do instead? He asks. Get better at looking clumsy without actually being hurt, Kakashi says. It's a skill, same as anything else. Controlled falls. Near misses that read as luck instead of skill. You've got good instincts for improvisation. I watched you use them in that windowless room. Point them at this instead. They spend a portion of that evening, away from the fire, running through exactly that, Kakashi throwing controlled, low-intensity strikes for Naruto to practice dodging in ways that look accidental rather than deliberate, teaching him the specific physical vocabulary of almost getting hit that reads, to an untrained eye, exactly like genuine inexperience. It's a strange kind of training. Most of what Naruto's learned in his life, whether from the academy or his own secret regimen, has been about becoming more capable. This is the opposite, becoming skilled enough at looking incapable that nobody questions it. There's something almost philosophically uncomfortable about it, and more than once during the session, Naruto catches himself wondering what exactly he's supposed to do with all this careful, deliberate diminishment once, if the secret ever gets to come out. He doesn't voice that thought out loud. Not yet. It's sitting there anyway, quietly, the same way it's been sitting there since the night in the windowless room. Zabuza Momochi arrives 2 days later, and if you know this story at all, you know exactly how this scene is supposed to go, a wall of thick, unnatural mist rolling in off the water, visibility dropping to almost nothing, and a low, flat voice announcing itself from somewhere inside that mist with the calm, practiced menace of a man who has killed more people than he can be bothered to count. What you might not expect is how Naruto's careful restraint holds up against something considerably more dangerous than 2 Jonin-level bandits with a chain. The moment the mist rolls in, every trained instinct in Naruto's body goes fully, completely alert, not the messy, performative alertness of a nervous genin, but the sharp, controlled readiness of someone who spent an entire night running command simulations against exactly this kind of environmental disadvantage. He has to actively, deliberately dial that readiness back down to something that reads as ordinary fear, and it's harder here than it's been at any point on this mission, because the threat is real in a way the demon brothers never quite were. Zabuza Momochi, Kakashi says, voice gone flat and serious in a way none of the genin have heard from him before, positioning himself protectively in front of Tazuna and the three kids. The demon of the hidden mist. The mist thickens further, Zabuza's voice curling out of it from multiple directions at once, an old, practiced intimidation technique meant to fray the nerves of exactly the kind of inexperienced team standing in front of him right now. Sakura's breathing goes tight and shallow. Sasuke's hand tightens around a kunai, jaw clenched. Tazuna, behind all of them, has gone pale and silent. Naruto lets his own breathing go a little ragged too, not entirely performed, because some genuine fear is bleeding through regardless of how much tactical clarity is running underneath it, but exaggerated slightly beyond what he actually feels, enough to blend seamlessly with Sakura and Sasuke's genuine terror. Kakashi of the Sharingan, Zabuza's voice says, finally, somewhere closer than any of them expected. It's an honor. But I'm afraid I have work to do. He materializes on the water's surface a short distance off, massive cleaver-like blade resting easily over one shoulder, expression unreadable behind wrapped bandages. Kakashi's hand rises to his forehead protector, and this is the moment even the mist-obscured genin can feel shifting, the air itself seeming to pressurize as Kakashi lifts the cloth away, revealing the crimson, spinning eye beneath. What follows is a fight far above anything the genin can meaningfully participate in. Kakashi and Zabuza trading blows and jutsu at a speed and scale that leaves Sasuke, Sakura, and even the disguised Naruto watching from a careful, ordered distance, forced into the role of protecting Tazuna rather than engaging directly. It's during this stretch of the fight, watching his sensei match a legendary missing nin blow for blow, that Naruto's careful restraint gets its hardest test yet. Because Zabuza's water clone technique starts working against Kakashi in a way that Naruto's trained mind recognizes as a specific, exploitable weakness almost immediately, the clone dispersing and reforming with a rhythm that suggests Zabuza is managing his actual chakra reserves more carefully than his aggressive posture would suggest, meaning a sustained, patient defense from Kakashi is likely to outlast him if the fight runs long enough. That's useful information. Genuinely, tactically useful information that could change how the genin position themselves to support their sensei rather than just huddling defensively around Tazuna. Naruto wants, badly, to say something. To turn to Sasuke and Sakura and lay out exactly what he's noticing, the way he would have without a second thought a week ago. The urge is almost physical, a pressure behind his teeth. He doesn't do it. Instead, watching Kakashi get momentarily trapped inside a massive sphere of water, the water prison jutsu, a technique that leaves Zabuza able to hold Kakashi immobile, while dispatching a water clone to finish off the exposed genin team. Naruto lets his real instincts take the lead in the one specific, narrow way he's decided, in the split second available to him, is acceptable, not tactical brilliance, just raw, desperate courage, the kind that wouldn't look out of place on a completely ordinary, frightened, stubborn kid who refuses to run even when he obviously should. Sasuke! Sakura! He shouts, voice cracking with real fear now, no performance needed. We gotta get Tazuna-san out of here, now. It's the right call, tactically. Retreat with the civilian is genuinely the correct priority when your sensei is pinned and a water clone with a fraction of Zabuza's real power is still more than a match for 3 genin. But Naruto delivers it exactly the way a scared 12-year-old would, loud and urgent rather than calm and calculated, and it lands perfectly with Sasuke and Sakura, who fall into position around Tazuna without a second's hesitation. The water clone doesn't let them go easily though, and this is where things get genuinely dangerous, fast, the clone bearing down on the retreating group with clear, murderous intent, Sasuke turning to intercept with a barrage of shuriken that the clone deflects with contemptuous ease. And this is the moment. The actual hinge of the entire chapter, the one Kakashi warned him about 3 nights ago in that quiet walk through the forest, the one about instincts overriding careful performance the instant the stakes get high enough. Because when the water clone's blade comes down towards Sasuke, who's a half-second too slow to fully clear the strike, who's about to take a genuinely serious, possibly lethal hit, Naruto's trained body moves before any conscious decision gets made at all. He doesn't think about cover. He doesn't calculate how this is going to look. He simply closes the distance in a burst of speed that has nothing to do with an ordinary genin's physical limits. catches the blade's trajectory with a kunai angle at exactly the right deflection point to redirect the force away from Sasuke's body instead of trying to meet it head-on, and executes a follow-up strike to the water clone's chakra-dense core with enough precision that the clone destabilizes and collapses back into an inert puddle in less than 2 seconds. The whole exchange takes less time than it takes to describe it. It's clean. It's fast. It's absolutely, unmistakably not the kind of thing a 3-time academy failure does on instinct. Silence follows, heavy and strange, the mist swirling around all of them. Sasuke stares up at Naruto from where he's still half crouched on the ground, expression somewhere between shock and something harder to name. Sakura's frozen a few feet away, mouth slightly open. Even Tazuna, pale and shaken, is staring. And Zabuza himself, still holding Kakashi immobile in that sphere of water, has gone quiet, his visible eyes narrowing with a flicker of genuine, professional interest. The kind of look a seasoned killer gives when something unexpected crosses his path. That's not academy technique, Zabuza says slowly, almost to himself. Naruto's stomach drops through the floor. For a long, suspended moment, nobody moves. The mist curls slowly around the clearing, Kakashi still pinned inside Zabuza's water prison. Watching the scene unfold with an expression Naruto can't quite read from this distance, but can guess at easily enough. A mixture of alarm at the exposure, and something that might, underneath it, be quiet approval that Sasuke's alive because of it. Naruto has maybe 2 seconds to decide how to handle this, and he uses every bit of the tactical training that got him into this mess in the first place. I've been training a lot, he blurts out, loud, defensive, exactly the tone of someone caught doing something impressive and immediately embarrassed about it rather than someone concealing a classified rank. I'm not gonna just stand here and watch my teammate get killed, believe it. I practice, okay? A lot. It's not a great cover story. It's not even a particularly convincing one, if you stop to actually examine the physics of what just happened. But it has one enormous advantage working in its favor. Everyone in this clearing, Zabuza included, has far more pressing concerns than interrogating a 12-year-old's training regimen in the middle of an active, ongoing fight for their sensei's life. Zabuza's attention, notably, doesn't fully let go of the moment, filing it away, the way a professional killer files away every piece of unexpected information he encounters, for later consideration if he survives this engagement. But he doesn't press it further right now, either, because Kakashi, still trapped, but very much not out of options, chooses this exact moment to reveal that the Kakashi currently held in the water prison is, in fact, another water clone of his own, the real Kakashi having repositioned during the chaos of the fight to set up exactly this kind of counter. The real fight resumes almost immediately, and in the scramble that follows, Zabuza forced to abandon his captured position, Kakashi pressing the advantage, the arrival, moments later, of a masked Hunter-nin who intervenes to apparently finish Zabuza off before dragging his corpse away with suspicious speed. Naruto's momentary exposure gets buried under the sheer chaos of everything else, happening at once, which doesn't mean it's forgotten. Not by Sasuke, who spends the walk back to Tazuna's house in unusually thoughtful silence, occasionally glancing sideways at Naruto with an expression that's shifted from simple suspicion into something more complicated, grudging, uncomfortable respect tangled up with genuine confusion about how someone he's spent months dismissing as the class clown just moved fast enough to save his life. Not by Sakura, who keeps stealing glances at Naruto too, though her version of the reaction is gentler, more openly impressed. The beginning of a real shift in how she sees him that has nothing to do with any lingering crush-adjacent politeness, and everything to do with actual respect. And certainly not by Kakashi, who, once the genin are settled for the night at Tazuna's house, chakra reserves badly strained from the fight and the earlier use of his Sharingan, pulls Naruto aside one more time with an expression that's more tired than angry, but serious all the same. We need to talk, he says quietly, about what just happened out there. They step outside onto a small covered porch, the sound of the sea audible somewhere in the darkness beyond, the mist from earlier finally starting to thin under a clear night sky. Kakashi looks worn in a way Naruto hasn't seen from him before. The Sharingan and the extended battle have clearly cost him more than his usual unbothered composure lets on. I know, Naruto says before Kakashi can start. I know, I broke cover. I couldn't just let Sasuke get hit like that. I know that's not. I know I wasn't supposed to move like that. I'm not upset with you for saving him, Kakashi says, and something in his tone makes Naruto look up, surprised. I told you back in Konoha, if it ever comes down to a choice between the secret and your teammates' safety, you choose them. That's not a rule I expect you to violate under any circumstances. And if you had hesitated back there because you were more worried about your cover than Sasuke's life, that would have concerned me far more than what actually happened. Then what? I'm telling you this because Zabuza noticed, Kakashi says. And Zabuza isn't dead, whatever that Hunter-nin wants us to believe. That kind of retrieval, a Hunter-nin taking the body rather than destroying it on the spot for proof of the kill, is a technique used to preserve a target for later, not standard procedure for a legitimate bounty confirmation. I'd wager everything I own that Zabuza is alive, recovering somewhere nearby, and that the person who killed him is working with him rather than against him. Naruto's stomach tightens. So he's gonna come back. Almost certainly. Probably in about a week, once his chakra recovers from tonight's fight. Kakashi's visible eye is steady, serious, which means we have a returning threat who's already flagged you as something more than an ordinary genin. That's a genuinely new problem, Naruto, and it's one I don't have a clean solution for. I can coach you on looking clumsy in a controlled bell test. I cannot coach you on how to unnotice something a professional killer already noticed. Naruto is quiet for a long moment, staring out at the dark water beyond the porch, turning that over. So what do we do? He asks finally, and there's a tiredness in his voice now that has nothing to do with chakra exhaustion. For now, Kakashi says, we prepare? All of us, including you, at whatever level of visible competence circumstances actually require going forward. I'm not going to ask you to hold back again if it costs a life to maintain a fiction. I meant what I said in Konoha, and I still mean it. But I am going to train you, hard, over the next week, because if Zabuza comes back with a plan built around what he saw tonight, you're going to need every bit of real skill you've got. Openly if it comes to that. Something in Naruto steadies at that. Not relief exactly, because the situation is still genuinely dangerous, still complicated in ways that don't have easy answers. But there's a kind of clarity in it too. For the first time since that windowless room 3 nights before graduation, someone's telling him, flatly, that the secret matters less than the people it's meant to protect. That if it has to break, it breaks, and the world doesn't end. Okay, he says quietly. Then let's get ready. Kakashi studies him for a moment, something almost like approval in his tired expression, and nods once. Get some sleep, he says. Tomorrow, we start training properly. Chakra control exercises for the whole team, tree climbing, the works. It'll look ordinary to Sasuke and Sakura. For you, it's going to mean considerably more than that. He heads back inside, leaving Naruto alone on the porch for a few minutes longer, staring out at the water where, somewhere beyond the retreating mist, a wounded swordsman is already, quietly, starting to plan his return.